This is the Fan Morning Show with KB, JB, and Jeff.
Everyone watching Braden Smith of Purdue. Where will he go with 5 to shoot? Smith with Roberts on him. Smith to the corner. Heidi a 3. It's good! We are tied! Playing for a spot in the Elite Eight. Uzan gets it in, gets it back, and he puts it in! What a play! Looking for a prayer. Cox gets it in. Smith from midcourt. His turnaround is not there. And the Cougars are moving on.
I thought it was one of those games that, both teams deserved to win. Both teams competed hard and played. Just a good college basketball game. It's unfortunate. Obviously, we didn't win the basketball game, but, congratulations to Houston. They're a great team. Everybody knows how this tournament goes, but I think they have enough pieces to win it all.
Intercepted. The Gators are going to the Final Four.
They'll run it out. And another #1 seed advances. The Duke Blue Devils come out of the East. And John Shire is headed to his first Final Four as a head coach.
Seventh heaven for Houston. The Cougars advance to their 7th Final Four and hoping this trip brings them their first title.
Izzo just told his team, don't foul. And that's it. The storybook season continues for Auburn. The Tigers are going to the Final Four. It will be all chalk on the Riverwalk.
Good morning and welcome into the Fan Morning Show. KB, JB, and Jeff. JB is in Florida with the Colts and the rest of the National Football League. And wow, what a weekend of basketball. We'll start on Friday night, KB, with what we just heard there. Purdue coming back from the big deficit late. They tie it up with the three-point shot, as you heard there. And then the last 2 seconds happened, man. It's just... Kelvin Sampson and his guys had practiced that play. Matt Painter talked afterwards about how they kind of knew what was coming, but they just left the void and the vacuum was filled and the basket was made and Houston moves on and Purdue goes home.
Man, brutal. It was, I feel like for Purdue fans out there, it got so close that it went from like you're uber proud to then you're just pissed. Like, wait a minute, we were right there. You erased the 10-point deficit late. Obviously, the very questionable push-off call that was not called. And then certainly the ending happens in just such a sudden nature. And we haven't had many of those, I think, in the tournament this year. It's been kind of a quiet tournament, but that was certainly one of them. And I thought the Iron Eagle call that Mark Dykton just cut up there to end it, all chalk on the Riverwalk, was very, very fitting. Iron Eagle showing why he is such a legend when it comes to play-by-play. But yeah, Friday night, man, for those that stayed up for it and witnessed that, an unbelievable game, unbelievable fight from Purdue. Braden Smith quarterbacking one of the more impressive individual efforts you'll see. And then all of a sudden, it all evaporates there with 2 seconds to go.
That's what we love and hate about sports all at once, man. You're just on a razor's edge all the time, and Purdue got themselves back to that edge after looking like they were staring into the chasm. We'll talk about that throughout the morning. Pacers got thumped early and often, I would say, by the Thunder the other night, but they still managed to gain ground over the weekend in the standings, KB. They're 2 up on the Detroit Pistons now, 3 up on the Milwaukee Bucks, who I don't think are going to sniff that 4th spot again.
No, the Bucks are wilting, to say the least. And the Pacers got a great opportunity this week. They'll face 3 teams that are all bound for the lottery in all likelihood coming up, all at home this week. So, yeah, the Thunder are in a different class. I think we saw that on Saturday. Unfortunately, Benedict Mathurin will now miss another game. He's out for tonight with the Kings here inside of Gainbridge Fieldhouse. But, yeah, I thought pretty much Saturday was a team that is a championship-bound team and a team of the Pacers that, is not on that tier right now. And the MVP, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, certainly played like it as well.
That's just a 2-man race right now, isn't it, MVP?
Yeah, and I feel like I lean towards Shai. I don't know. I've probably always been a little bit of a, if you are on the best team, that can be a big tiebreaker for me. I kind of agree with what Tyrese Halliburton said on Saturday.
Where would the Nuggets be without Jokic, though?
Well, sure. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to act like Jokic shouldn't be up there.
But I mean, I think they'd be scrapping for 8, 9, 10 probably.
Yeah, but if you're picking, again, this year the MVP, to me it's Shai Gilgeous-Alexander.
Mark Dykton rejoins us again today.
Yes.
You're gone for 9 days. You come back, and you're leaving again tomorrow.
Hey, kids are on spring break for 2 weeks. Wife's finding flight deals. So I was like, well.
I feel like we should take this as a sign.
Oh, no.
No. So, I drove back from Florida on Saturday. That was a hell of a drive. That took forever.
That's a long drive.
And then, so I'm back today. Kind of recouped yesterday. Just slept all day yesterday.
Well, the important question is, did the koala marches make it all the way through the trip?
They got pounded down on the first drive. They never saw the return drive at all. The girls downed them quickly.
They didn't make it to the Edinburgh Outlet Mall, is what you're saying?
No, they were gone quickly. Even my daughter's like, "Do we have more of those?" I'm like, "No." Have to Venmo the boss.
How'd your kids travel? How'd the girls do?
They weren't too bad. They're used to the drive.
Yeah.
But it is. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're 3 or 33. That the drive never ends, especially Georgia. I'm like, get me out of this damn state. It just goes forever. You cross the border, and you're just like, can I see the lights of Tennessee at some point? And then you see Tennessee, and Tennessee's got construction left and right. You're like, get me home.
Oh, you'd love driving out west where every state takes like 12 hours to drive through.
Yeah. Saturday was brutal.
You get through Nashville, too, you hit that like southern, probably more like through Bowling Green. You hit that Kentucky stretch where it's like one exit in like 42 miles. It's like, Horse Cave, Kentucky's, but the only thing you're going to see here for the next round of civilization.
You're checking the gas tank. Like, I don't think there's another gas station once I get through these mountains, so I might want to fuel up here and stuff. But it was fun. But yeah, then now leaving later today to go on another trip. Just a short trip to Texas, but bringing the girls out there. So I'll be back Thursday, Friday. I was like, I'm
just
coming
a
back
short
for 1
trip
day.
to Texas. I consider a short trip like going to Cincinnati for a day.
Not the Dykton household, man.
No, they're tough. I get the sense, too, when you guys are in the car, you're relaying between Buc-ee's billboard signs and stops, right?
Buc-ee's it's always high on the power ranking. So we were there multiple times.
Do we take the pictures with the girls outside with the beaver and everything?
Oh, yeah, the beaver was out in full display. So I got pictures of that. Yeah, I got all that going on. So had a 3-year-old turn 4 during the trip and all that stuff. So we are celebrating birthdays and eating Buc-ee nuggets.
I also want to give a shout-out to...
No better way to celebrate.
Yeah,
I know.
I want to give a shout-out to everybody out and about and in the building and at the arena on Saturday night, checking in on my mom, asking how she's doing. She is doing better. Hopefully she'll get out of the hospital today or tomorrow. She's got a big breathing problem going on that got really intense for a while a couple of days ago, but she seems to be pretty steady now, and we'll chart the next course of action probably a little bit later on today. But thanks for you and James for holding it down, and everybody's just been so good about all that, and she's hanging in there, man. She's doing her thing, so we'll check back in on her a little bit later on today. We got a lot to talk about, obviously. How was your weekend, by the way? What did you do? I know you had basketball. Did you guys go? I was going to go to the Purdue game Friday night, but I had to be with my mom.
Yeah.
I was listening and watching to that game in the emergency room. So.
Yeah, consumed a ton of hoops, not only Friday, but how about Saturday? I mean, Jeff, I know you were on the call of the 4A game.
Wow.
But just an outstanding 4-game stretch there over at Gainbridge Fieldhouse. And, shout out to the state of Indiana, and I'll emphasize the state. I think very often, rightfully so, we fall into a bit of a bubble here when it comes to the state tournament of, just wait till the non-Indy schools come to the Circle City and start to play some of our own here. And I think I was talking with Greg Rakestraw yesterday. I think he said if you include LaPel, which, LaPel, I don't know how Indy that you call it, but basically it's the first time we have had 4 state champions a full hour away from the Circle City dating back to 2008. And really, I felt like every game got better, throughout the day. Orleans, of course, winning their first ever state title at any sport, started the day off. Manchester, a huge run there in the 2A game. 3A-wise, the Chase Knesny tip dunk with under a minute to go is certainly one of the highlight plays that you'll see.
By the way, that is one of I've done NBA finals, NCAA tournaments, Final Fours, championship games, you name it. That follow dunk was as electric in the moment, as authoritative as I've seen, certainly from a high school
kid. From the
kid.
top of the key.
And it was one of those in the arena, you could hear it and almost feel it, KB. And half the crowd obviously electrified, the other half stunned.
Yeah, and South Bend hasn't had many state champions here recently, so for them to get a title, and then obviously you called one of the best games we have seen, certainly in the Class era. And I just think an unbelievable story. Jeffersonville, Sean Wilkerson, I know he was on with Jake late last week. What Trey Singleton did to kind of power that team, the huge assist in overtime. And, Fishers played with fire a little bit in that sectional round and then weren't really touched at all in the regional and semi-state. And I think we talked about it last week. It's like Jeffersonville is not your typical, again, pocket of Indiana school that hasn't played anybody. I mean, they came up here last week and they beat Ellen and Mount Vernon in the semi-state round. They played a lot of teams early in the season. Obviously, Singleton had the injury early in the year, but just what a great, great game and just an awesome four games inside of Gainbridge Fieldhouse.
Well, a lot of people didn't realize these two teams had met in the summertime in one of the summer classics, and I know Fishers was not playing with John Anthony Hall, but Jeffersonville won that game too. And it wasn't considered an official varsity game or anything like that. But if you're the Jeffersonville kids, you didn't beat Fishers once, but you beat them twice this year, KB. And I don't think a lot of people realized that had taken place. And, yes, Singleton was unbelievable. He's still got to be sore. I mean, that kid, I think he played all 36 minutes. He was getting rebounds. He was scoring points. He was just in the middle of everything, and he just looked exhilarated but exhausted at the end of that basketball game. It was just an incredible game to see. And look, even at the very end, 67-66, it wasn't a good look, but Fisher still had a chance to win at the very end in overtime, too.
I saw the 19 points. You combine all four games, the smallest margin ever in our history with class basketball here. So I thought very fitting what we had in the wee hours of Saturday morning for Purdue fans to have to witness. Obviously, yesterday, you saw Houston just outclass Tennessee for so much of that game. And now, again, as Ian Eagle, I thought eloquently said, all chalk on the Riverwalk for the first time since 2008, all one seeds, and that Final Four was also in San Antonio. That was the Mario Chalmers shot, of course, against Memphis.
All right, big morning ahead here on the Fan Morning Show. We'll check in with James Boyd a little bit later on because the Colts, they'll be in the news today because the NFL owners meeting are taking place in Florida. We'll do that. Big shout out, too, before we go. Speaking of the broadcast on the IHSAA Champions Radio Network on Saturday night, I was carried throughout the entire broadcast by Coach Pete Smith and Rob Moorhead, who just did a fantastic job. So thanks to all those guys. And Scotty was there for all four games. He just does his thing, Scott Johnston, all the time. All right, we'll talk a little bit more about NFL owners meetings the week ahead for the Pacers and an amazing week and season, really, of college basketball as we continue next. It's the Fan Morning Show on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Brought to you by the National Invitation Tournament. Experience college basketball's beginning with the NIT coming to Hinkle Fieldhouse April 1st and 3rd.
Happy Monday. It was a terrific weekend of basketball, although not, a great weekend if you're a high school player at Orleans, Manchester, South Bend, St. Joseph, Jeffersonville. But Purdue, man, to rally the way they did, it still stings a little bit. And to have that last inbounds baseline play executed so well by Houston and seemingly not covered all that well by Purdue, that one still hurts a little bit, Kev.
I think it hurts more than if they just would have, just kind of stumbled to the finish line after Houston got up 10 there. Incredible fight by Purdue. Again, Braden Smith, 15 assists, 3 turnovers, just an absurd quarterbacking effort of all of that. But, man, just the nature of how it ends, I think just makes it sting even more of wow, you had the questionable call go against you, and then you had – and we'll get into it, and we'll play some of the audio. The last play of the game, it's certainly something Purdue has run before. I know it looks different, and, the old adage of you never leave the inbounder. Purdue had actually done it earlier in the game, and it had worked. But Houston had a great read off of it, and the rest is history. Is now all 4 number 1 seeds off to the Final Four.
Yeah, Purdue losing to Houston 62-60 in that Sweet 16 game. You were talking about the Final Four for the men. Saturday night, Florida takes on Auburn. Houston goes up against Duke. For the women, South Carolina waits on tonight's winner between TCU or Texas. UCLA will take on USC or UConn. Hard to believe UConn's right back where they are again. They just keep rolling, don't they?
Yeah, those sound like a lot of teams I'm used to hearing on the women's side of the bracket there.
All right. EJ Speed signs over the weekend with the Houston Texans, KB, for $5 million per year. What's going on there?
Well, so much for the old podcast between him and Zaire Franklin. Some yapping when those two teams meet twice a year. I don't think any real surprise. I thought some inconsistency for EJ Speed in his first year as a full-time starter. Having said that, linebacker is definitely on the needs list. Remember, Grant Stewart exited earlier in free agency off to the Lions. So when you look at the Zaire Franklin, first off, he is now becoming even more indispensable. And what's the depth? Do they go to Jalen Carlisle, the rookie last year from Missouri? Will he now ascend to a starting role? Do we see a draft pick there at linebacker? I do think that is somewhere relatively high on the needs list. Chris Ballard has drafted historically well there. We'll see if that continues under Lou Anarumo.
All right. Also, the NFL owners' meetings taking place in Florida this week. Our own James Boyd, who also works for The Athletic, is down there covering the team for The Athletic and for 93.5, 107.5 The Fan. KB, what are we looking for from a Colts perspective this week? Anything really of note, whether or not Mr. Irsay speaks or what?
It doesn't sound like he is. I would say, just Shane Steichen meeting, I think right now, if I'm not mistaken. I think it's an early breakfast here on a Monday morning. Chris Ballard, then we'll talk, I believe James said later tomorrow. So, for Ballard's sake, it's the first time we've heard from him since free agency has started. Outside of that behind-the-scenes video, we played a little bit of those audio clips last week. So, just general thoughts on how the offseason has unfolded so far with the Colts. I would say, that's kind of the big topics that you usually get from an owner's meetings.
All right. Anything else from an NFL perspective, rules changes or anything like that we should really keep an eye on?
I haven't seen anything. I saw a little bit on the new kickoff,
tweaking it a little bit, right?
Maybe making a touchback. I want to say they said the 35-yard line, which I kind of like. It would promote even more returns, you would think, kind of really penalize you from a touchback standpoint. And then I also saw you could do an onside kick anytime you are down in a game. I know there was a little bit of debate of that during the Super Bowl, so I think that is something that makes some sense as well.
All right, also in the NBA over the past few days, Pacers thumped by the Thunder 132-111. They lead the Pistons by 2 games in the Eastern Conference right now. They lead Milwaukee by 3, and if you're wondering, KB, all the games against the Pistons have been completed, done, and dusted. 3-1, the Pacers against the Pistons, which could possibly be your 4-5 matchup in the first round.
Yeah, it's honestly leaning towards that. What do we got, 2 weeks to go in the regular season?
Yeah.
So, the Pacers have a week on paper that they should handle. I mean, it's 3 teams that are likely bound for the lottery, all at home this week, at Denver on Sunday. So certainly that'll be a challenge, assuming Denver is back to full strength. I know they've been a little bit banged up here as of late. But yeah, the Thunder were in a different class than the Pacers on Saturday night, and Benedict Mathurin dealing with the calf issue. So he will miss tonight. I want to say 5.5 point favorite, I think, for the Pacers tonight with the Kings. And the Kings are like the Chicago Bulls of the West, right?
Yeah. Who knows what's going to happen night to night?
Every night is a gamble.
Yeah, I've seen
DeMar
them.
DeRozan, Zach LaVine.
It's crazy.
And then they've got a little bit of the
So
old
they're
guard.
literally the Chicago Bulls,
They
the
got a
old
little bit
Chicago
of the old
Bulls.
pacer
right?
guard there, if you will, with Domantas Sabonis. Shout out to Trey Lyles, a man that has certainly played in the state finals here. He is coming off the bench for the Kings still.
NASCAR, Denny Hamlin wins in Martinsville. Menwo Lee wins the PGA tournament at the Texas Children's Tournament in Houston. Did you watch any of that over the weekend, or were you too busy?
I did not. I think if I'm turning on the Houston Open over the Elite Eight, then I've probably got some issues.
Knowing you, I figured you'd probably have the whole multi-screen setup, and you were watching that as it took place. So
Maddie would say, well, you can go single parent somewhere else.
it's always important, man. Got to have balance, KB.
Mark, you'd be happy to
Balance.
know we did play the clip. I had Kylan scramble for it, and I said after that Reds pathetic opening day effort,
Good.
Mark would want this clip to be played, so we dialed it up. So I don't know if you felt
Might have
that.
to hear
I
it
don't know
again.
if you shook anywhere, if you nodded your head indirectly, hearing that from afar. But yes, Where You Gonna Go was played.
It's kind of like I knew what was going on, and I was like, I hope for my sake, I hope I've left some sort of legacy here where that is at least in the listeners' minds that's being played in their head mentally.
Again, I thought integrity-wise, it needed to be played. So it took a while for us to get to the clip, but we did play it.
Also, pour one out for Joel Erickson's Brewers.
Ooh.
My
Did
God,
Did Aaron Judge just hit another one?
Yeah.
that was brutal.
That expanded bat, what do you guys think about that expanded barrel that some MIT scientist working for the Yankees
Seems
came
shady.
up with?
Seems
The
shady.
MLB measured it. It said it meets all.
The Reds need to get more of those bats.
I know. Everybody's going to go scramble to get those things, right? Pitchers are like, wait, what? Giants beat the Reds 6-3 yesterday. The
I'm
Cubs
just looking for an Easton or
gave up
TPX
10
bat.
runs. Sorry about that, KB. 10 runs they gave up. Mark, you all right with that?
Yeah, because my Cubs bullpen is not very good. I'm not liking that so far, and we're only 6 games in. Not loving it. Not loving it at all.
All right. Tough weather last night. The Indians game against the St. Paul Saints up in Minnesota. That one was postponed. All right.
Opening day
what's happening.
tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
Home
Let's go.
opening day.
Let's
Hopefully
go.
weather cooperates, and certainly to everybody that experienced the weather yesterday around, maybe a little bit more of our northern part of our listening audience, but man, those skies turned in a hurry. We were playing in the backyard. Next thing you know, the temperature dropped about 10 degrees. So hopefully damage-wise, everyone was safe out there, and I was able to get inside there on that Sunday afternoon.
Took my aunt to church last night, and you could just hear during the service just pounding on the roof. That was how heavy the
Max
thunderstorms
Bowen was
were.
asking about the Thunder about 77 times last night.
All right, that's what's going on. Busy weekend of sports. We look ahead. We'll talk a little bit more about the Colts and what they expect to not only accomplish at the owners' meetings this week, but also what they have left to do before the draft comes your way in a couple of weeks. Mark Dykton is back. JB is on the road with the NFL owners' meetings, but everybody else is intact here on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
You're listening to the Fan Morning Show on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Almost all back together again. James Boyd is in Palm Beach, Florida, KB, with a very difficult assignment all week. He's got to hang out at a 5-star hotel and try to catch some Colts really no players, but General Manager Chris Ballard, Shane Steichen will speak earlier today. Tough assignment there, I know.
I think he just filled up his bowl of Fruit Loops and just posted up next to Shane Steichen right now. I'm picturing James Boyd asking, yeah.
No, he said he's not staying at
you guys
the
got any Frosted Flakes here?
Right. He's not staying at the swanky hotel, but I could see him like heading over to the buffet like, I'm in room 415.
I don't know what the old Athletic New York Times budget is looking like. But yes, AFC Coaches Breakfast, so you'll see some lingering NFL tidbits here on this Monday morning. I want to say the NFC coaches go tomorrow. I think Chris Ballard meets tomorrow with, I think it's James down there. I believe Joel A. Erickson from the Star, Stephen Holder from ESPN, the Colts production team as well. So you'll have a little bit of news. Doesn't sound like Jim Irsay will be meeting the media. Owners' meetings are always kind of more of a, first, it can be a one-stop shop for the big three. Your owner, your GM, and your head coach. You usually don't get that really at any event all offseason long. Now, again, for the Colts, it doesn't sound like ownership will be speaking, but it is probably more of a league-wide thing. You know, a lot of rule changes, competition committee, those sorts of things. You know, you heard the, tush push. You know, is that going to be eliminated, et cetera, et cetera. But, yeah, I believe James, you said he's calling in today or tomorrow with us?
Hopefully today. He texted me last night. He said he and I were actually, we spoke on the phone, and he was saying, don't quite know what it's going to look like in the morning, but if I can get away, I'll text you guys, and I'll join you probably sometime in the, between 8:45, and we've got a couple of guests today, too, that we've got to go around as well. As a matter of fact, Nathan Baird joins us at 8:30 to talk about Purdue, and then at 9 o'clock, Tony East is going to stop by Locked On Pacers.
The hotel buffets, can't you kind of get away with that? You can just walk in and go, like, they're not checking room keys, are they?
I've always felt that you could, but some of those people behind the desk, they just give you eyes. It's like they know everybody. They have those eyes that are like, I know if you were in room 232 or not.
You just grab like a random credit card, just walk by, like, oh yeah, like pretend you're going to your room, and then like 5 minutes later, you come down, okay, I have some biscuits and gravy and some scrambled eggs here.
Well, it's not quite that straightforward. At the swankier places, you do get a bill and have to order. Generally, somebody comes over and says, hey, are you doing the buffet or whatever? Now, if
My name's John Smith.
If you're used to me and you stay at like your basic Marriott Residence Inn or something like that, then you could probably pull off the, I'm just going up through the what they have laid out there and probably take
percentage of people at the Continental Breakfast each morning that are not staying at the hotel. Would you say that it's 1%? Would you say it's 5%? Sounds like the whole Dykton family's doing it.
Yeah.
It's 5%, but it should be more because those breakfasts are just hanging out there. So if you want a free meal.
That's how you guys are going back to Texas now.
Hey, man.
Starting tomorrow.
What do you roll with? Do you like the little make-it-yourself waffles? Do you like the
honestly,
oatmeal?
The Continental Breakfast for young families is gold.
It's gold. Game changer.
Perfect.
My kid, they're on top of the world. Like, wait, all this you can have?
Yeah. I'm like, you
don't eat any of this at home, but now all of a sudden because it's put in front of you in a cool little manner that you can turn the wheel and the cereal comes out, and next thing you know, you look like you invented the first spaceship to go to the moon.
A kid has never been more excited to eat Cheerios in their life than when they see the cereal wheel.
And any of those bread products, whether it's the Danishes or whatever kind of rolls they have up there, or muffins, that's always good. Some fruit. So, yeah, for the kids, it is the ideal one-stop shop, don't you think?
Yeah, it saves me some money on you're already paying for the hotel. You might as well get a free breakfast out of it and stuff. So
You need to stop getting caffeine into your kids, though, without – I know you like to make the girls drink coffee. Don't do that, Mark.
Hey, no, they need decaf at the most. They needed to wire down a little bit last night.
He's going to get them all –
CPS might be called.
He's going to get them all caffeine and sugared up for that 16-hour stint from Florida back to here.
God, no. They all needed naps then. I was have any tranquilizer darts handy. I would have used those.
It's a Fan Morning Show with KB, JB, and Jeff. JB is at the owners' meetings in Palm Springs, as we talked about just a moment ago. And KB, I was reading the website overnight. You did a piece about still looking for a tight end. What's likely to happen between now and the draft, or do you think it's just draft or bust at this point?
Yeah, the significant move's got to come through the draft. I don't think there's anybody in free agency that would make you feel that much better about the group. So, sure, you could use maybe another body from a veteran free agency standpoint, but I think it's got to come, and I think it's got to be very early in the draft. I think round 1 or 2. I think if you wait any longer, It's really a disservice to your offense. It's a disservice to that position of need. And I mean, you talk to anybody, people know full well what a consistent tight end presence in the pass catching game can mean for a young quarterback. And even if you're playing Daniel Jones, for those out there that are done with Richardson and, they want to see Daniel Jones, again, inconsistent quarterback play, you need a consistent presence at tight end, and that has been lacking. So, yeah, when I view the tight end need, I think deep down the Colts know it. I think they just don't want to truly, truly say it. And I would be a bit surprised if we got through. I honestly think it'd be malpractice if you got through rounds 1 and 2 of the draft and you didn't draft the tight end.
If Warren's gone, who do you prefer?
Well, I know some people honestly like Colston Loveland a little bit more. Do you trade down or even look at round 2? I mean, that's the thing about the draft is this year's class, there's supposed to be some pretty good depth at tight end. A lot of people mentioned Mason Taylor out of LSU. I know Brian Kelly has spoken very highly of him, and Brian Kelly obviously had some really good tight ends at Notre Dame and kind of puts Taylor into that category. There were a lot of tight ends at the Senior Bowl where Chris Watt, one of the Colts assistants, coached that position group. So certainly Warren and or Loveland seems to be the popular thought at 14. But again, we talked to Matt Miller, I think it was, or one of the draft experts, and I think they mentioned like 4 or 5 tight ends graded in the top 50 of the draft. Yeah. And we're not used to that. So be stunned, and again, I think it would be a miss if the Colts didn't draft a tight end around 1 or 2.
And no shot they're going to trade back for extra picks or things like that, right?
Oh boy, I'm not saying that.
Because if they do 2 or 3 of those tight ends, they might move back 5 or 6 spots, right?
That is the Chris Ballard MO. Never bet against the Chris Ballard trade back. No, that is that would be foolish. Because again, the thing about Ballard, if you go back to his comments in January, free agency-wise, it sounded different. I would argue his thoughts on the defense sounded different. Nothing sounded different about his thoughts on the draft. He still is very bullish on his approach to drafts. So I don't think you're all of a sudden going to see a big change in, no, we're going to stay away from the strong testing athletes, or we're going to stay away from, trading back. No. If you believe Ballard's words, which so far this offseason, his words defensively met action. Louis Anarumo comes in for Gus Bradley. Free agency, they certainly met action. The draft words, they really weren't that different. So, we're sitting here, 3.5 weeks away from it beginning? I'd be surprised if we felt anything too different from the draft.
We saw E.J. Speed signed as a free agent by the Houston Texans yesterday for $5 million. How do you feel about that at $5 million for the Colts? Would you like to see them match that or maybe just go a little bit better, or you think that's just about where it needs to be?
Yeah, I think just inconsistency, the speed effort and him being a full-time starter, you saw what you needed to. He's also a little bit older. I feel like people don't realize that with E.J. Speed. I want to say he might already be 30, if not close to that. And, again, linebacker has been a position where Chris Ballard has drafted extraordinarily well all throughout the different levels of the draft there. So
he turns 30 on June 1st.
Okay. So, yeah, he is one of those older draft picks. But, linebacker is – it's one where I don't think I hold it in a super high importance, but I do look at the current depth, and I'm thinking, if Zaire Franklin got hurt, you'd be in scramble mode big time. I mean, for what it's worth, Grant Stewart also left to go to the Lions, and he was, pretty much your top depth guy. You still have Shagun Alubi, you still have Jalen Carlisle. I assume one of those will ascend to, big-time playing time for you. And maybe Anarumo is a guy that's just like, hey, this is modern NFL. We're going to play with 2 linebackers. We don't really throw a third out there very often. I know Cincinnati had a lot of secondary sub packages, so played a lot of nickel, the extra corner, or even dime, and extra defensive back. But I also want to point out, again, it is still March 31st. Finding a linebacker in the draft or finding a linebacker in free agency, I don't think that position is as dried up as some others.
The other thing we don't talk about this time of year, but takes place a lot too, is once those cuts start coming in August, you start to scour the league wire and you see who might be available and who fits your scheme. And, I know that guy just got released, but I had him 5 years ago. I've always really liked him. I think he fits my scheme. You go pick that guy up too. It's, as I always say, there are different ways to build your roster. You obviously have to do it from the top down. But, Kevin, there's a lot of good teams that do a great job of building their roster from the bottom up, and they just don't have a ton of weaknesses everywhere.
Well, the Colts have done that, and we've seen where it's gotten them.
Well, you can't do that as your primary.
Right, but the Colts have often done that as their primary. So I would not be a fan of that route necessarily in building large chunks of your roster. I think Colts have done that too often.
No, but you can pick. My point is, you can pick up a guy that's going to play every so often for you, and not
that's
not
the thing
feel too
is
bad. Yeah.
right now at linebacker you need a guy to start. I
Yeah.
mean right now you have a starting job open. Is that starting job going to Jalen Carlisle? Is it going to a draft pick? Again, are you projecting Shaguna Luby into more snaps? That is probably Zaire Franklin. I mean, a lot of people probably already viewed him as rather indispensable. I mean, he continues to almost rise up that depth chart when you look at speed and, he had struggles last season, undeniably, but he also played a good amount of snaps for you. And Grant Stewart started a handful of games for you last season, and both of those guys are gone. So it's linebacker, so Ballard has earned the right. He hasn't earned the right at many positions, but he's definitely earned the right at linebacker for you to almost give him benefit of the doubt at that position. But it is something where, and Franklin, has been very healthy throughout his career, but you certainly need him to stay healthy this season.
Kevin Bowen, Jeff Rickard, James Boyd is in Florida for the owners' meetings. We'll talk to him hopefully a little bit later on today. In the meantime, the overall NFL package right now, we saw finally Russell Wilson gets his job. Are we just going to wait till right before the start of summer camp before we find out, or do we even care if Aaron Rodgers goes to the Steelers or not at this point? I mean, it's all that or nothing, right?
Yeah, right? I mean, that's it. I guess Worshiter, Sanders gets drafted. I mean, it seems like Cam Ward is going 1. And who drafts him at 1? Is it Tennessee going to stay there? Are they just playing this public game about Cam Ward to try to, incentivize teams to trade up? We'll see how that plays out. But, yeah, I mean, at this point, it just seems like Aaron Rodgers is being Aaron Rodgers. Which
Mark's
I know
favorite player.
That's why Mark wanted to come back on this Monday morning.
Stick it and sit around. I mean, he's burned all his
shove
options.
that new baseball bat
Yeah.
Major League Baseball up as you know what.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What's it called?
I don't know, but I don't like it.
Well, it hasn't helped out our team, so maybe if our teams were hitting home runs, we would like it.
That's right. That was the big controversy over the weekend.
Torpedo bat.
The Yankees debut the torpedo bat, and they've taken, it's all size and weight. It's regulation, but they have transferred a lot of that weight up into that big 4 to 6 inch area of the barrel where you're trying to square the ball up, and the Yankees started using it, developed by an MIT guy that they've hired. And they have 8 home runs in one game the other day to debut? Is that what it was?
Yeah, they were slapping home runs left and right.
Well, Judge had like 4 and 7 at bats at one point.
Yeah. At some point, again, stop throwing him the baseball, right? When a guy's like that? I know it's all dependent on the situation, but there's a point where if he's going to go get something, make him chase something anyway.
Gosh, you would hope.
Man, so we'll keep an eye on all of that Major League Baseball stuff. Obviously, the big weekend of basketball. Purdue gets to the Sweet 16.
What'd you make of the final play?
You got to find a way. To me, I always thought it was just known that, especially on the baseline, you got to guard the guy who's throwing the ball in, right? Otherwise, you see exactly what happened happen. And I don't know if they just got confused about who was going to take what, because I know Braden went out towards the other side and left that there, but was he thinking like an NFL defense, hey, that's okay if I go over here, this guy's going to rotate down?
Yeah, I think that's...
And they just didn't communicate it, or what was going on?
I think that's what he was thinking. Yeah, I think there was...
That's what it sounded like.
There was a play earlier in the second half where Miles Colvin got a steal off of the inbounds, and it seemed to be a kind of a similar coverage where they do take the defender on the inbounder, and in that case, at the end of the game, it was L.J. Cryer, and that was Houston's first option. Kelvin Sampson said that after the game there.
Yeah, there's a third option that scored, I believe, right?
And Sampson really said that was just pretty instinctual. Yes, the second option, the pass, I think it was the Tugler kid who caught the pass, that is an option that they have, but the actual pass back to the inbounder was strictly instinctual. So, who is, was it CJ Cox? Was it somebody else who was supposed to, continue to rotate around so that play doesn't happen? It seems like me watching it third hand that like Purdue got so close, it hurts even more. Like when Houston got up 10, let's say Purdue throws in a 3 or 2 the rest of the game, they play the foul game, they lose by 5, whatever. They cover, valiant effort, et cetera, et cetera. For the most part, this season probably went like you kind of thought, okay, 4 seed, decent run in the Big Ten, you get to the Sweet 16, like not the end of the world. You kind of can walk up like head held high. I mean, look at what Houston just did to Tennessee yesterday. But the fact that you got so close I feel like it hurts even more. And you watch how Tennessee then played in the Elite Eight game.
What, they scored 15 points in the first half?
Yeah, I think it was they flashed up the graphic, the fewest points ever in a half by a 1 or 2 seed in the history of the tournament there. So, boy, I just it would be easier to swallow a little bit, I think, if Houston would have had that 10-point lead and kind of kept it. But the fact that Purdue made one more, obviously huge run, you certainly had the push off. That wasn't called, a little bit earlier on that final trip down the floor. That could have given Purdue an opportunity at a game winner. You add up all of that, and I don't know, maybe now that we're 48 hours removed from it, maybe it doesn't sting as much, but I felt like waking up Saturday morning, I was like, damn, this has got to hurt for Purdue fans. Like, you are right there, and the suddenness, everyone is probably thinking overtime with 2.8 seconds to go, and for that to unfold the way it did, gosh, it just got to be gut-wrenching.
It's tough because you've watched so many games, KB. With 2.5 seconds to go, so much can happen. Like, I know that sounds crazy, but that's a lot of time. You can set a screen or two. You can bring a guy off a ball screen. But the way it went down, where the guy was just there underneath the basket all by himself, that's, I think, what hurts.
It's like the bleep moment of like, oh, it's just like.
The one thing that was easy is what they got.
You want Cryer, even if Cryer shoots even the first option. That would have been what, like an 18-footer of, and it's not like he had played that great throughout the game. I get that he's their best player. But I cannot say enough complimentary things about Braden Smith. I don't know if people fully realize, 15 assists to 3 turnovers. Like, people don't do that against people.
And not in that spot.
People don't do that, period. Let me start there. People certainly don't do that to Houston. There are not point guards that are able to handle the doubles all game long, not allowing him to shoot. A lot of teams, they opt to play kind of that drop coverage against Braden Smith, and he hits pull-up after pull-up or takes a lot of those pull-ups. Houston was not going to play that game. And so he had to kind of, swallow his own pride a little bit and say, all right, I need to get others involved. And for him to have literally assisted on every single second-half field goal for Purdue, 5 assists to 1 turnover, that's the ratio against Houston, against the number 1 defense in college basketball. I know it comes in a losing effort, and I get that he scored 7 points, so I feel like some people won't truly appreciate the game that he had, but that was just absurd what Braden Smith did on Friday night to keep Purdue in it, to make sure their offense, amidst some struggles that you're inevitably going to have against Houston, for him to keep that offense going. That was an amazing, amazing effort from him.
Not only that, I would think it would be frustrating to Kelvin Sampson, and you're double-teaming this guy the entire game. And KB, I don't know that he was ever really in trouble with that double team, maybe more than once, possibly twice the entire game. He handled it, recognized it, knew what to do with it so well throughout the entire game that he kept Purdue in the basketball game because of his court vision, the way he was able to distribute the basketball. And I think they even talked about it on CBS just a little bit, the fact that it just didn't seem to bother him all that much. He always seemed to make the right read off the double team. It's crazy.
I feel like he has such a great grasp of like late clock situations too. Like when he kicked it out to Heidi for the 3 for the tie, that was super late clock, and yet he still isn't panicking.
It was right there
in that mode. So many guards kind of get late clock and they just throw something up.
Yeah.
But for him to kick it out there, and certainly at that point, Lucas Oil was absolutely rocking. So, yeah,
35,000. How about that?
It's just weird because I feel like, this wasn't Auburn earlier in the year. This wasn't even UConn in the national title game. Like, Purdue went into this matchup. They were the significant underdog. No one was really giving them a chance to win this game. And to get as close as they did, to me, it almost hurts even more because then you're sitting here and maybe you play out the hypothetical of, boom, he gets the Elite Eight. And, look at what Tennessee showed last year. And look at what that stadium, or I should say what Tennessee not necessarily showed last year against you, but what they showed yesterday. That place would have been 90-10 Purdue yesterday afternoon, and now you could be playing for a spot back in the Final Four. So, yeah, that and boy, having to stay up till 1 a.m. and watch that, oh, man, you just add it all up, and I feel for Purdue fans.
Critically, Mark Dykton, I know that Purdue covered. Did you profit off that?
I did not, because Florida doesn't allow gambling. So I was kind of sitting there watching these games, and I'm like, I should have made more bets in Tennessee while I was there.
I think Georgia.
I have run into that before where I've had to text my brother-in-law back in Indiana and lay down a bet for me. Is that degenerate?
No, because
Not
I almost
anymore.
I
Or is
almost
that just
texted
support fan.
10
I
years
almost-
ago, yes, not anymore.
I almost texted Kevin. I was going to give you my info and be like, "Hey, can you make this bet for me? Because I think I have a free bet that I have to use before it expires." Luckily, I was able to make that one of them. But
I
if it-
currently have a healthy bet with a healthy return on a Auburn-Houston national title game.
okay.
Should I hedge that? Is this dumb not to bet Duke right now?
I mean, I picked Duke to win the whole thing, but boy, all chalk down in the Final Four. I mean, are you getting buyout options here?
No.
At this point, I think you just let it ride.
Are we
Do
still
I-
doing buyout options? Are a lot of places
I
still
was
doing
looking
that?
for like a cash out option, but I didn't see it. And then every time I watch Florida, I'm like, they're on the brink, and then Walter Clayton throws in a 30-footer.
Yeah. We were listening to that game driving back, and like Florida was on the ropes.
Texas Tech, I mean, dog peeing in the yard plus dog peeing in the house probably is a better way to put it. Plus Walter Clayton Jr. hitting big shot, and that's what he did against UConn in round 2.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they were on the brink round 2. So again, first time since 2008, all 4 number 1 seeds. That would have been Mario Chalmers, Kansas, Kevin Love, Darren Collison, Russell Westbrook, UCLA, the Memphis team. And then was that I think it was Carolina Hansborough. I think they won it next year.
It was Carolina.
Carolina did, but that is what we've got coming up here Saturday inside the Alamo Dome.
It was an unbelievable month back then for me. My son, my oldest, was born on Selection Sunday,
Whoa!
and I won the big.
Did you fill out the bracket?
Yes, I won the tournament that year
At the same
with
time?
Kansas. And I took Kansas mostly because
Honey,
my wife was from Kansas.
Honey, will you hold him in a little longer? We got to wait for the East region.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, there was a lot of watching basketball while the kid was falling asleep in my arms
That
on the
sounds like a
couch.
great
though,
time.
man. It was a wonderful stretch.
Some promote
basketball.
vasectomies, some promote kids being born at that time.
All right,
Sit
coming
on
up
your
in a
ass
moment,
either way.
we'll talk a little bit more about the big week ahead for the Indiana Pacers, what went on in college and high school basketball over the weekend, and of course, the Colts have their coach and general manager, and I think the owner's down in Palm Beach, but we're not sure, all week long here as we look ahead at 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
This is the Fan Morning Show with KB, JB, and Jeff.
Everyone watching Braden Smith of Purdue. Where will he go with 5 to shoot? Smith with Roberts on him. Smith to the corner. Heidi a 3. It's good! We are tied! Playing for a spot in the Elite Eight. Uzan gets it in. Gets it back. And he puts it in! What a play! Looking for a prayer. Cox gets it in. Smith from midcourt. His turnaround is not there. And the Cougars are moving on.
I thought it was one of those games that, both teams deserved to win. Both teams competed hard and played. Just a good college basketball game. It's unfortunate. Obviously, we didn't win the basketball game, but, congratulations to Houston. They're a great team. Everybody knows how this tournament goes, but I think they have enough pieces to win it all.
Intercepted. The Gators are going to the Final Four.
They'll run it out. And another number 1 seed advances. The Duke Blue Devils come out of the East. And John Shire is headed to his first Final Four as a head coach.
7th heaven for Houston. The Cougars advance to their 7th Final Four and hoping this trip brings them their first title.
Izzo just told his team, don't foul. And that's it. The storybook season continues for Auburn. The Tigers are going to the Final Four. It will be all chalk on the Riverwalk.
Nice job by Mark Dykton, kind of stitching together the weekend that was in college basketball. Tough Friday night for Purdue, right down to the very end. And Kevin, you and I have talked about it just a little bit. And, it's also Monday morning after the weekend. Start to peek ahead. What's next for Matt Painter's team? What's it look like next year?
Yeah, sounds like they will have some activity in the portal. I know Matt Painter even hit on this before the season ended. Sounds like 1 to 2 additions they will make. Officially, Will Berg into the portal. I think he reads the writing on the wall, knowing that Daniel Jacobson will be back from injury. I think Painter specifically mentioned just a little bit more physicality. So, you would think as well they'll add a big, but Brian Waddell from Carmel just never really has had a chance to, I think, stay healthy also. Earn, real playing time at the Big Ten level. He is in the portal as well. So Purdue, it sounds like they will have a little bit more activity than we're used to. I know Indiana's got an important day on their campus. I think Ryan Conwell, the Pike product, is visiting. So certainly Indiana needs everything in terms of outside of Trent Sisley. They don't have they don't have any returners on their roster. We'll see how the Luke Goody situation plays out, but it does seem like a little bit more portal-wise for Purdue. And, there was part of me that watched that unfold on Friday night, Jeff, and thought, will Purdue be back here next year? And back here, I mean,
that's why I wonder.
Lucas Oil Stadium. I mean, that's where
first time since 2021, right?
That is the Final Four site for next season. And on paper, a Braden Smith, a Fletcher Lawyer, a Cam Heidi, a Trey Kaufman-Wren, a Miles Cole. And again, we'll see if all these players, stay out of the portal.
And stay healthy, too, next year.
Certainly that. Yeah. And Daniel Jacobson, back after, he was certainly a heralded recruit and had a great summer, Team USA, et cetera, et cetera. Purdue should be a team that, while this year you look at it and probably say, Sweet 16, that's kind of where we expected. I think next year, if they can retain what they do and then, maybe go out and make a portal move or two, they should be a team that I think we're talking about in the first week of April.
It's going to be fun to watch. And one of the things we do know, Matt Painter will put together a heck of a team that'll compete next year, especially given the things that he's got to work around. And I guess the question is, you look down in Bloomington, as you were mentioning a moment ago, new coach DeVries, he's got a lot of work to do, and in a way, he's kind of starting over from scratch down there.
And he was courtside Saturday night. You saw him in the building, I assume?
Yeah, I did not. I mean, I caught a glance of him in that once, and that was about it. I had other things on my mind. But, it's interesting because the Northwestern recruit, all of a sudden, wasn't talking so much about maybe going to Northwestern. Maybe that gets opened up a little bit.
Really?
Yeah.
Trey Singleton?
Trey Singleton. And I'm not saying he will or won't. I'm just saying he conspicuous. When he was asked after the game what's next, he did not mention going to Northwestern. He gave it the old, I just want to enjoy this and have a good weekend. And I'm paraphrasing here, but he didn't mention where he might be going to school next.
Got it.
I thought was
he's
when it was
thinking about spring break already.
When to me it was clear that was the intention of the question, right?
Got it.
So he kind of
Chris Collins was
sidestepped
there,
that.
right?
Yeah. There was a couple. There were all kinds of guys down there.
He probably wouldn't love hearing that.
So it'll be fun. But what a great night, too, Saturday. Just a great day. I mean, you talked about the fact that for the first time in how long all 4 schools are at least an hour out of Indianapolis?
Yeah, I was talking with Greg Shaw yesterday. I go, Ray, last time no Indy school. And how you define Indy. Do you call Fishers an Indy school? Do you call University an Indy school? I kind of consider the donut counties an Indy school. I think it was the first time we haven't had a champion within an hour drive since, I believe, 2008 is what Rake said. And, again, you could probably get out some maps and push back a little bit. But it's been a long time since we've had, obviously, Orleans, down the state, certainly Jeffersonville, certainly South Bend, St. Joe's. Manchester would, I guess, be the closest. When you look, I don't know, maybe them or Orleans would be the closest. But unbelievable games. Got better, it seems like, as the day moved along. And what a run from Fishers and for Jeffersonville to challenge themselves as much as they did throughout their high school season. The Singleton injury, I know, was a big one for them. I mean, they come up and they beat Ellen and Mount Vernon at Newcastle. It's not like they got a favorable, hey, you come down to Seymour, come down to, here for the semi-state. What they did last weekend and then what they did on Saturday night, damn impressive. So Sean Wilkerson, shout out to him. And the story is pretty impressive. And that Jeffersonville team kind of building for this. And it's not just Singleton. They got some guards as well that can play. And they certainly made the plays down the stretch, and Fishers answered quite often, but Jeffersonville was able to get the last laugh.
Well, it was a lot of fun to watch that basketball game, too, because so many guys competed. You were talking about Fishers. Jason Gardner Jr. had a chance to talk to his dad, who was in the tunnel before the game, and just spend a few minutes with him. He's now working with the basketball program down at the University of Arizona, and he basically said, like every parent, it's you get knots in your stomach, but you can't wait to see how he's going to do. And he's played so well, and it's been a lot of fun. And I think he's only a sophomore, so he's going to be back. And Fishers, I'm sure, will get it back put together again. Coach Weniger does a great job over there. But the game before that, I really thought Crispus Attucks had a shot. They were down 9 in the fourth quarter. They came back and tied it up right before that follow dunk that we saw from South Bend St. Joseph's, which is still one of the most amazing plays I've seen ever at any level of basketball. Chase Knisney, I think is his name. But it's just huge, and that kind of took the air out of the balloon that Attucks had built back up over those last couple of minutes. You could kind of feel it at that point. It was crazy.
Chris Hawkins was kind of thinking that, if that play doesn't happen, is there a chance that, all of a sudden you get a little bit of an end-of-game situation like they got in 2017? I think, if I'm not mistaken, they beat Twin Lakes on a tip-in back in 2017 there. But yeah, Knesdy coming down the lane, and for those somewhat familiar maybe with his name, his older brother was a great player at South Bend St. Joe's. He actually just entered the transfer portal. He played at Notre Dame the last 3 or 4 years. But, crowd seemed great. I know it's a long list of people to thank, but, Greg Rakestraw, Kyle Nenrip, just what they do for high school sports here. And I know things don't totally wind down for each of those two. They still stay pretty active in the spring season, but great for
We're lucky.
games. We were very lucky to have both of those guys in our market.
So it was a lot of fun. Again, I was talking about this with the guys that I had worked with. Great job by Rob Moorhead, who was doing sidelines for us on the radio broadcast, and Coach Pete Smith. Just talking about, I've done so many state high school tournaments now in several states throughout the last, 35 years or so, and there's nothing quite like basketball in the state of Indiana. It's just different. You had a full arena for the most part throughout the day. It was full throughout on Saturday night. Jeffersonville, who won the state tournament, they traveled well.
Oh, no shot
there was red all over that arena. They got a nice send-off on Friday when they left town. Fans came down and were lining both sides of the street as the buses pulled out of the parking lot and stuff like that. And it's just it is just different here, KB. There's just no other way to say it. Basketball is just different here, and I love it.
James Boyd throwing back Fruit Loops down at the Breakers in Palm Beach as we speak. He shared this tweet a little bit earlier. Again, AFC coaches breakfast at the NFL owners meetings. Shane Steichen says Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones will split reps this offseason starting in OTAs. He said he doesn't have a timeline on when they'll make a decision on who is QB1. The most consistent QB will be the starter.
So they're essentially telling Anthony Richardson publicly, at least, like, dude, there's no guarantee for you in this job. You're going to have to go back and earn it again. And I know that we look at that as, well, there's no way unless he just completely gets shown up in this competition, no way he's not the day one starter. Do you think they're just playing games with him, or are they really serious about this truly being whoever has a better camp is going to be the starting quarterback?
I think it's what's difficult for me, Jeff, with all of this is, if you're going to preach competition and we're going to have a legit one, then splitting reps certainly is the only, I guess, really fair way to do it. My question would be this. Both guys need ample improvement, right?
Yep.
So if you're splitting these reps.
And Jones coming into a brand new offense, too.
Sure. If you're splitting these reps, aren't you just getting to the end of the offseason and you're still having a pretty mediocre quarterback no matter who wins it?
Well, I think the optimistic viewpoint would be one of them just takes it by the throat and turns into everything that everybody thought they were going to be coming out of college, right?
Yeah, that sounds internally optimistic to me. That's what I think I struggle with is you have two very inconsistent quarterbacks throughout their career so far.
Mm-hmm.
To your point, Daniel Jones coming into a new offense, and now you're going to split the reps. So will either one of them have any opportunity to really improve? Or is it just going to be you get to the end of the race and it's still going to be two mediocre quarterbacks? One was just slightly less mediocre than the other. I think that is what is really challenging about the Colts quarterback situation. Now, is there an easy answer to it? Probably not. If I had to pick something, I would probably commit to Richardson to get more of the reps and see if this healthy offseason did anything. Again, Daniel Jones, 70 starts in his career. I think you kind of know what you have at this point with him. He also started a whole lot at Duke.
Where do you come down on the argument that, look at Geno Smith and Baker Mayfield. They completely resurrected their careers in the last couple of years with new offenses and new offensive coordinators.
Yeah, I mean, Geno and Baker had nowhere near 70 starts in their respective previous homes.
I will say this for Baker, even though he was really up and down his first 3, 4, 5 years, he had 3-4 game stretches where you were like, okay, this is the dude.
Yeah, and I don't know. I don't think maybe Daniel Jones, has had that. Even if you look at him exiting Duke, I mean, I know he was a 6 overall pick, but I just didn't even feel like he had a stretch. I mean, Baker was a great college player. I don't think anyone ever viewed Daniel Jones like that. Daniel Jones has had great quarterback coaching. I mean, you ask the Mannings what they think of the Cutcliffes. I mean, David Cutcliffe is high up there as anybody, and even Brian Dable with the Giants. So it's like that's where I just kind of struggle on this. Of sure, if you're going to have competition, you split the reps and boom, one day, and then. But like I think there is also a misnomer in how much like actual team practice you are getting on a very consistent pattern. Maybe Shane Steichen will change up the schedule a little bit, but in the previous 2 off seasons. Last year they had a shortened offseason program than other NFL teams. I mean, they're not starting until April 21st. So I'll be curious to see what that schedule looks like. How many actual, OTA, veteran minicamp days do you have? And then when you get to training camp, of course, how early are you committing to a start? Are you playing these guys in the preseason? I mean, if you're going to have a true competition, I would think you would have to.
You only got
right?
3 games. You're going to have to, I think.
So that's where, again, I just find myself pausing a little bit. It's like, okay, yeah, I mean, I guess, here's the Daniel Jones day and here's the Anthony Richardson day, and you go back to Jones and then you go back to Richardson, but are any of these guys actually getting better?
And of course, the other part of that equation, too, if you're Chris Ballard is, and you've got to think this way, even if Anthony Richardson is your guy and is the starting quarterback from day one, how many games does he play in the regular season, Kevin?
Well, this is a little bit of a conversation James and I had last week. Do they draft a quarterback? Because if you are of the belief that Anthony Richardson's just going to get hurt and going to miss X amount of time, well, then you're going to need a backup for Daniel Jones. So is that where that third quarterback comes into play? Quinn Ewers had a top 30 visit. It was reported with the Colts. Again, those mid-round quarterbacks, that draft pick could be a guy that's kind of one play away from, all of a sudden being the, backup like Sam Ehlinger was for so many games for you here over the last couple of years, mostly with Gardner Minshew a couple of years ago as well. So, we'll get that answer coming up in 3.5 weeks. I mean, the draft is nearing, and I know it's not maybe the most pressing need in the world, and we don't really see the Colts draft quarterbacks kind of in those mid-rounds. They really haven't done. I mean, Jacob Eason was one of the few that I can recall. I guess Ehlinger, you could maybe say it was one as a 6th-round pick, but, when you get to round 3, when you get to round 4, when you get to round 5, do we see the Colts taking a chance at quarterback?
Well, that's going to be a very interesting couple of weeks as you get ready for the NFL draft. It comes your way 3 weeks from now, Thursday night, 1st round, 2nd round, and 3rd round on Friday nights, and then the rest of the draft on Saturday, and that's the question. Do they go hunting for a quarterback? And here's the other question, Mark Dyke, then. If they did draft or even bring in as a free agent Tyler Shuck at some point in time from Louisville, do I get remunerated for this bet that we had?
I don't think so. Because
what was that word?
Will I get paid back?
That was a great SAT word.
Remunerated there.
That must have been his word on the calendar.
Man,
today.
that was outstanding.
I'll take that from the IU professor.
Daniel Jones is still on the roster too, so I don't know. I think we all got default Anthony Richardson, right? So I guess if they draft him, I guess we can go back to the table. What would your snack of choice be?
Like the Honey Bear Grams?
Okay. The Teddy
Graham
things?
The Teddy Grahams, you like those? KB,
I'm always
have you
a
ever
chocolate
had those?
Teddy
Your kids
Grahams
have
guy,
those?
but those are solid.
Yeah, we just we've got snacks for the first soccer game of the season. We just picked up the iced animal crackers.
Those aren't bad. Animal crackers are always
have
good.
a little ice glaze on them with some sprinkles on them.
Yeah.
Rosie was all about them yesterday. So
Did you get the bag, the big bag, or the box?
yeah,
or
I think
what?
we got 2 boxes because we have so many kids on the team. So yeah, I'm hoping that means a lot of goals for the Strawberries coming up this weekend.
Mark wants to know, is there a line on that game?
Yeah, I could use it. I didn't make any bets on vacation.
You can make that part of your Indiana parlay moving forward.
I can hedge that instead of the Auburn, Houston ticket that I'm currently holding.
You bring up the Final Four, number 1 seeds everywhere, the chalkiest of chalk.
I don't think anybody needs more compliments to Kelvin Sampson, but I'll throw one out there. I had forgotten, and obviously when you think of Houston basketball, Jeff, you probably think back to
I think of Guy Lewis,
the Clyde
the
Drexler,
Dream, and
Drexler,
Drexler,
exactly.
Phi Slamma Jamma, baby.
So I think our audience knows this, but the years on those would have been what?
Gosh, early 90s, late 80s?
Early 80s.
Yeah.
80,
I guess it's that far.
83, 84.
Yeah.
They hadn't won an NCAA tournament game since those teams until Sampson took over.
Yeah,
like,
they had
had
real downside.
A
Real
20, 30-year drought of nothing. And, again, I don't know if people in our state need any more Kelvin Sampson compliments. They probably don't want to hear it. But if you need another one, it's not like Houston was even showing a flash or two of hope. I mean, they were a middling Conference USA team at best. And certainly, yeah, they're in a Houston market, et cetera, et cetera. But, for what Sampson took over there and what he's turned it into, I mean, if you look at it right now, yeah, UConn has obviously won back-to-back national titles. But if you look at, NCAA tournament wins over the last handful of years, I mean, Houston is atop that list. It's amazing what he has done there to build them into this perennial team in an era where I think now it's going to be a little bit more difficult to sustain that sort of success because, it is such a portal-hungry time.
Yeah, talent is always, and restocking your team is always going to be a thing, but it also just amazes me when you look down at the coaches that were involved, even in this year's tournament. It's throughout all the changes, transitions, and everything, you still have all the same coaches that are getting their teams from here to there and from one weekend to the next weekend. And I know Calipari's out, but he can certainly still coach. You saw Tom Izzo going back to another Elite Eight again, getting on the verge of going to another Final Four. You see what Kelvin Sampson is doing now. We talked about Rick Pitino, even though he got bounced before the Sweet 16, what he's done at St. John's. Coaches still matter in college basketball. And I think the idea now of getting yourself a general manager where there is somebody on staff whose only job is to worry about making sure the players you want to recruit get their NIL and get into your building, that's going to be the biggest difference. But guys that can still coach are always going to be there at the end, Colin.
Have you guys
They're just always going to be there. Call it in and call it good.
You guys seen the lines yet on these two games?
I have not. I can look it up real quick. Have you? Did you just look it up?
You want to take a guess? What do you got? Florida-Auburn.
Florida-Auburn. I am going to say Florida is going to be like a 1.5-point favorite.
Florida 2.5 point favorite. How about Duke-Houston?
I'm going to go Duke 3.5.
Duke 4.5. The over-under drastically different in these two games. Florida-Auburn 161.5.
I might pound the over on that one too.
Duke-Houston 136.5. Duke-Houston will be the second game from the Alamo Dome coming up. I love that the Final Four still goes to San Antonio. When I think of Final Four sites, for some reason, I think of San Antonio a lot.
Should just be a 3-year rotation. Indianapolis, San Antonio, New Orleans. That's it.
Well,
that's it.
I wasn't born yesterday. I know that's probably not going to be the case, but I think it's cool. I mean, it's not even like the Spurs play the Alamo Dome anymore. I mean, I think it's cool that they continue to reward one of the older traditional sites when I think about the Final Four. So coming up 6:09 Saturday, Florida and Auburn. Florida did win at Auburn in the regular season. And, of course, Duke and Houston, the number one offense against the number one defense in college basketball, 8:49.
And I think Duke's only 3 spots below Houston defensively, too, aren't they? They're right there.
And honestly, undermining Houston offensively. I know they don't put up a ton of numbers. At least they didn't do that in the Elite Eight and Sweet 16, but still one of the better three-point shooting teams in college basketball this year.
The Morning Checkdown, brought to you by the Women's Basketball Invitation Tournament. Elevate the game at the WBIT, coming to Hinkle Fieldhouse March 31st and April 2nd.
Purdue losing to Houston in the Sweet 16, 62-60 on Friday night over at Lucas Oil Stadium. Last inbounds play with just a couple of seconds remaining sinks the Boilers. They left the inbounder uncovered, and he goes right in. It was crazy. And
Here was Matt Painter on the last play of the game from Friday night.
We were we kind of going through what they could run, whatever, and so we were going to help out to the outer third, and then we talked about the flare going out the other side, and then when they went to that way, that's Trey's man was able to step to the basketball there. But when you saw Miles make that play earlier, and he got that steal, so we just help out on that outer third, and then the other guy who was guarding the guy coming out on the outer third takes the ball. So when Braden jumped out to the other side, it opened up that seam, and we had to get back there, and we just didn't cover it back up.
There's your explanation. That's how it all went down. And a desperation three at the end, no good.
I'd have to watch the play again. I think it might have been C.J. Cox who then would have been responsible for the inbounder. Obviously, it was pretty bang-bang. Asking him to maybe get all the way back to the inbounder was a bit much. Again, that play did work, as Matt pointed out, with about 5 minutes to go. But certainly great execution, great instincts from Houston, and a crushing loss for Purdue in the Sweet 16. All right, Pacers in action tonight. They've got the Sacramento Kings inside of Gainbridge Fieldhouse. Benedict Mathurin will miss another game due to left calf soreness. The Pacers, I'd say pretty outclassed, honestly, over the weekend by the Thunder. That typically happens with teams playing the Oklahoma City Thunder this season, but that game wasn't really too much of a game, certainly in the fourth quarter. It was not that, so the Pacers do lose over the weekend. The good news for them, the teams around them in the Eastern Conference, they continue to lose a whole lot, so as they enter, the second to last week of the regular season, at this point, Jeff, I'd be surprised if they weren't a home court team in round one, probably the 4 seed.
Essentially a 3-game lead over both the Pistons and Milwaukee. They have a 2-game lead over the Pistons in the standings, but they've won the season series 3-1 on that one. And Milwaukee, with Damian Lillard out for who knows how long, they're in a tough spot right now. They play at home against the Kings tonight. Also, yesterday, E.J. Speed makes a decision. It is not the Indianapolis Colts. He is now on a rival team in the division, KB.
Over under 1.5 15-yard penalties for E.J. Speed in the first Colts-Texans game this year.
I'll go under because he's going to be on his P's and Q's.
Yeah,
what do you think?
I think that's wishful thinking. I think a little bit of the writing on the wall here with him. Now, again, linebacker-wise, it opens up a lot of playing time and some uncertainty at that position. But, like I was saying earlier, I think Chris Ballard has probably earned benefit of the doubt at linebacker in his history as general manager. So we'll see exactly how that looks. But, yes, off to the Houston Texans for E.J. Speed.
All right. Also over the weekend, NASCAR Denny Hamlin wins in Martinsville. Also, Minwoo Lee wins the PGA Tournament stop in Texas, the Children's Houston Open. No IndyCar this past weekend. They'll next be on the track in Long Beach. That'll be coming up in a couple of weeks. High school basketball, your champions, 1A Orleans, 2A Manchester, 3A South Bend St. Joseph, and 4A Jeffersonville in overtime. A 67-66 win over Fisher, snapping their 43-game win streak. But I had mentioned earlier in the show, and we talked about it on the broadcast, Jeffersonville won against Fisher's head up in the summertime. Now, Fisher's played without John Anthony Hall, but still, they feel pretty good about their chances against Fisher's right now.
Yeah, no one should have been overlooking them. I mean, we mentioned that all week long. They had scheduled a whole lot of Indy action. Obviously won the semi-state up here at Newcastle over Ellen and Mount Vernon. So Sean Wilkerson's team, battle-tested. Trey Singleton, a great, great talent as well. Speaking of talent heading to college basketball, little portal updates from Purdue. Will Berg, Brian Waddell, the Carmel grad, both entering the portal. I don't think surprises there. Matt Painter had already mentioned even before Purdue's season ended They needed to go out and get at least a big guy. We'll see what else. Purdue sounds like a little bit more portal activity than we're used to. And some reports out there from Bloomington, Ryan Conwell, the Pike product, will visit Indiana today. Of course, most recently at Xavier. Before that, Indiana State and South Florida. I would assume he will be in high demand. You would think Sean Miller would want some interest there from Texas, having coached him last year. And on the women's front, I don't know how much of a surprise this is, but some reports out there that Yarden Garcon, Indiana's average 14 points per game last year for Terry Morin, has entered the portal. Also on the women's side, Notre Dame bowed out in the Sweet 16, had a relatively big lead in third quarter, and TCU dominated the final 10 or 15 minutes of the game.
You shouldn't have changed your seat. You
No
should have just
local
stayed right where you were in the first half.
No local flavor on the men's or women's side as we reach now the end of March.
That's what's happening in the world of sports. Coming up in a moment, we'll dive in deeper to Purdue. We'll talk to looking forward to Nathan Baird is coming by. Tony East joins us at 9. And I just got a text from James Boyd, who's ready to join us when we can slot him in from the owners' meeting down in Florida. It's the Fan Morning Show with KB, JB, and Jeff right here at 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
You're listening to the Fan Morning Show on Sports Radio 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
KB and Jeff today. We've got our third member of the booth, Mr. James Boyd, down in Florida at the NFL owners meetings. We'll talk to him in a few minutes. But right now, let's talk more Purdue, and we check out the Payless Liquors hotline right now where Nathan Baird of the Indy Star joins us. Nathan, thanks so much for being here on a Monday morning after the tournament this past weekend. And, man, you've been doing this for a while, covering Purdue. Where do you rank this team? Where do you put the performance that this group and Matt Painter put together this year? Do we have Nathan? Nathan's there. He's not coming through the board right now? All right, we'll call him back right there. What's going on with the telephones the last week anyway? We got a little gremlins.
We look like Purdue defending the last play of the game, right?
Yeah, just did not cover the inbounds passer. That's what happened.
He was just
right
left
there.
in awe about your question. He didn't know exactly where to properly rank them.
But I think Matt Painter did one of his better coaching jobs that I've seen in the last 15 years this past year. I thought to get that team where they really struggled through that February stretch where they were struggling a lot really late January into mid-February and then pull it all back together again, I thought without a true big man, I thought it was a pretty nice job.
Yeah, the ascension of Trey Coffin-Rath, that really stood out to me, for him to not only just become a double-digit scorer, but one of the best players in the Big Ten, certainly, I thought was huge.
All right, take two on the Payless Liquors hotline. Nathan Baird, can you hear my voice, my friend? He cannot. I don't know what's going on here.
He can hear us. I don't think we can hear
Well, one question I did have for Nathan is just, when you hear Matt Painter say, okay, we need one or two things in the portal, he seems to be pretty clear about the one, it being a big guy.
Mm-hmm.
What is the other? Is it, another?
You need one more wing guy, don't you?
Part of me is like, okay, you need another wing, but it's like, Miles Colvin and Cam Heide. Are those your wings? Do you look at it and say, hey, you need another, kind of combo guard? Jakari Harris. I thought I heard him in the background there for a second. Nathan, you got us?
I hear him now. Nathan, how are you?
I'm here, guys. How you doing?
I like it. Mark goes on vacation for a week. He forgot everything. That's what happened.
I poured coffee on the machine before I left.
Apologies, Nathan, for this effort here. You can tell it's a Monday for us.
I'll repeat the question again. I thought Matt Painter did a fantastic job this year. You've been covering this team for, probably longer than you want to say. Where would you rank the job that he did and the job of this team kind of coming back and getting off the mat this year?
Yeah, I think it was a team that all season long knew that it had, unlike last season when it was kind of this, force of nature, it had some deficiencies it was going to have to overcome. It didn't think it was probably going to be a strong rebounding team, for one. It had some questions as far as, what kind of ball handling it would have beyond Braden Smith and having to put a lot on some true freshmen in some of those regards. And it didn't know where it was going to be defensively. It was going to have to make some progress there. And I think in the last third of the season, one of their frustrations was they weren't getting there. In fact, they felt like maybe there was even some regression in some of those areas. I thought the Houston game in particular, though, was almost an answer to all those things that they had been sort of striving for, not just in the last third of the season, but really kind of all year. Like, can they rebound? Can they be physical enough with a team of that level? If they're going up against an elite defensive team, can they match that? Will their, some of the guys you were just mentioning, the Cam Heides, the Miles Colvins, will those kind of players step up when another team shuts down Braden Smith, Trey Coffin-Renn? Like, could they kind of check all those boxes against the best teams in the country? And they almost got it done. They come up 2 points short. So in some ways that made it a very disappointing night for them. In other ways, when you look at a roster that most of these guys were here last year for that run, a lot of them obviously eligible to be back next year to take it another shot. It's sort of a bridge between the team they were before with Zach Edey and the best version of the team they can be without him.
It's at NW Baird, Baird on Twitter. Nathan Baird covers Purdue for the Star. Does a great job with us here, Payless Liquors Hotline. Nathan, let's put a bow tie on Friday night. The final play, is that something that you think Purdue just looks at and says, no, we just needed to execute it better, or do they wish, they would have ran a different coverage? Granted, that is a coverage that, had worked for them earlier in the game.
Well, I think that's it. I think there was a little bit of a chess match going on there, and They do a lot of studying, a lot of film breakdown of what Houston's going to do on those inbounds. Similarly, Houston's doing that with how Purdue defends those plays. And that was something that I think Houston always had in its back pocket for when it thought a team might run a certain or react in a certain way to the ball coming in there. And, that's just one of those things that comes down when the other team has the ball under their basket with 3 seconds left. You're pretty vulnerable. Like either they're going to get it a shot or are they going to get in a position where they can draw a foul? That's a tough spot to be in. I think if you're Purdue and you look at it practically, you're like, well, what could you have done to not have it be a tie game at that point? Like there was that 11-1 run to start the second half. If Purdue interrupts that earlier, if they get some more offense of their own going, there was a stretch in the first half where they held Houston without a field goal for like 7 minutes, but they didn't really expand their lead there. They were scuffling too because Houston's a really strong defensive team. Like you can go back to a lot of stretches in a game like that and find another moment where you can get those 2 points back. So I think they'll learn from it. It'll be something that, again, with all these players in position to come back next year, maybe they react differently in that situation next time it comes up.
Matt Painter's been pretty honest with you guys about the portal. I believe he said 1 to 2 additions is what he thought. A big guy was something that he's definitely mentioned. Do you think that is a big guy they want to start, or do you view that more as depth? And then if you had to go to the second portal addition, what would you envision that looking like?
I don't know that they're going to be telling whoever they bring in anything about, starting or coming off the bench or anything like that. I think it's more to, come in and compete because at every spot, they already have guys that they think are talented and worthy of starting. I mean, obviously, we're talking front court. Trey Coffin-Renton is going to start for this team. Like, there's no way around that. But then someone like Daniel Jacobson was in position to start last year. He was the starting center until he breaks his leg in the second game. And I don't think you're necessarily telling someone that they're going to come in and for sure start over him. I think it's a matter of come in and compete and work hard, and we'll figure that out later as far as who's going to be in the starting lineup. They had definitely talked like they needed someone at the 4 spot too. Like they wanted one in this class. They recruited a handful of guys in this 2025 class and just never found the right fit, or the guys that they liked picked other places. So they've only got one guard coming in this class, in Antoine West, and they're pretty full on guards. So I think they'd like to add someone else in that front court situation, someone who could, last year they asked Cam Heide to play a lot of 4 in small ball situations. I think they want someone who they could play next to Trey Coffin-Renton at the 4, who is maybe a little bit more of a conventional 4-man, because Cam Heide is a little bit more of a 3, really. If they could find someone who's just a little bit more stout and can bring that physicality. The one thing that Matt Painter said after the game on Friday was that this team wasn't physical enough, and he thought that was his fault. Now, he could have meant that from a development standpoint, but he just as easily could have meant that from a roster building standpoint, that they just didn't get the one extra guy at that spot that maybe would have balanced things out.
Nathan, I guess this is a simple question. It kind of feels like there's a possibility to reload and be even better next year. Am I missing that?
Oh, no, I think that's been the plan all along, or the long-term goal. I think they came out of last year's run and said, you've got a starting backcourt of sophomores. You've got, Trey Coffin-Renton, who they had always expected big things from, but who, just hadn't had that opportunity yet. And Matt Painter has always said he was going to be an all Big Ten player, and here he was, a first-team all Big Ten player averaging 20 points a game. So I think they saw all those pieces coming back and didn't just see that as a one-year thing. There was going to still be 2 years of development for what those guys could become. And in some ways, I think they were even pleasantly surprised by what they got as from true freshmen from C.J. Cox and Jakari Harris, and where those guys start things off. And then again, Daniel Jacobson, like he was supposed to be the rim protector, a 7'4" guy who was a little bit of a different 7'4" guy for them. Technically same height as Zach Edey, but very different body type, and someone who can even stretch defenses with the way he shoots from the perimeter. So there was a lot to like about what this team was going to be in 2 years, And I think all of that is still on the table. But I think they also now see with the roster movement that they have, they've got some room to work with now that they've had a couple of their own guys, Will Berg and Brian Waddell go in the portal. They've got some scholarship room to work with to enhance their team. And that's always been something that Matt Painter's had on the table. There's a little bit of a misnomer that, Purdue is like anti-portal. Well, they just don't really have people leave, so they never have to remake their whole roster out of the portal. What they have done, whether it was Lance Jones last season or season before last, I should say now, I guess, or someone like John Occhius from back in 2014-15, like they've always been able to bring in really crucial veteran guys who can round out what they already have, kind of enhance the nucleus that they already have. And that's what they're looking to do in these next couple of weeks with the guys who are in the portal now.
Yeah, David Jenkins from Utah. I mean, that's kind of been their thought process here in recent years. Nathan, great work all year long. We appreciate you hopping on with us when we've asked you to, and we'll see if Purdue can be back in Lucas Oil Stadium this time next year, getting ready for the Final Four. Thank you, Nathan.
Sure thing, anytime.
All right, we got a little bit of news from the owners' meetings down there in Florida. Our very own James Boyd is there, and he's going to join us next.
You're listening to the Fan Morning Show on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
I like this stuff, Mark Dykton. Keep it rolling, baby.
Well, it's where James is at, and we're going to check in with him.
I got you there. Let's go to Palm Beach, Florida right now. James Boyd, the third member of our morning show with Kevin Bowe and Jeff Rickard. And, of course, I guess fourth man, because Mark Dykton counts too, obviously. But he joins us now on the Payless Liquors hotline. We just want to know, have you been hitting the owner's breakfast buffet, kind of like you belong there?
Nah, I think they would throw me out if I tried that. They have a medium breakfast, which is off to the side. I'm looking down. There's a Bentley driving past me on the corridor. So, yeah, it's a little different down here. I'll say that.
Did you go Fruit Loops in the bowl? What'd you go with the media breakfast?
No, so I had a croissant, I had some fruits, I had some potatoes and some eggs. So got that down in about 5 minutes and then went over to talk to Shane.
Look at that.
Nice.
Hardy. Okay, judging by your tweets, James, I know you're busy this morning, so appreciate the time. The split reps and OTAs in training camp, was that kind of the big news from Shane Steichen? Obviously, Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones splitting those reps.
Yes, that was the biggest takeaway, and just how definitive Shane Steichen said it. I also followed up and said, hey, well, the big knock on Anthony is he just hasn't had reps. So what does that, do for him? Does it help or hurt him? And he said, look, man, it's a competition. He's going to have to just take advantage of the reps he gets. And so it sounds like this will be from OTAs throughout the preseason. I asked also, hey, when do you want to have an answer on this? And, of course, Shane hit me with the classic, I don't know yet. And I'm like, you just don't want to tell me. But we'll find out by week one, I suppose.
James, what did you learn past that this morning?
Well, one of the things I wanted to get a clarity on was the offensive line, like what's the plan at right guard. And Shane didn't really give too much on that. I asked, hey, could Matt Gonzalez move inside? And he's like, yeah, that's a possibility. The only definitive thing that he said was that Braden Smith will stay at tackle, which I know some fans had asked about that. Could he move inside? Could Matt Gonzalez take his spot at the right tackle? But no, he said that, Braden will stay outside. And it sounds like obviously Braden's in a better place too when the season ended. Other than that, the big news is just about, again, the quarterback competition, the quarterback position. How does Anthony feel about those things? And one of the things that Shane mentioned about, when it comes to Daniel Jones, he's had success. His completion percentage is pretty high. And, so that was the big takeaway.
You think preseason playing time will be a little bit more for these guys than maybe most starting quarterback situations around the league?
I believe so, because that's when you'll have, like, your real live bullets. You can get tackled. You can have real defenders in your face that aren't, scared to hit you because they'll get fined. And so I think that'll be a big factor in it. So I don't think this will be decided as early as it has been in years past. I know during the Gardner Minshew, Anthony Richardson, it was kind of like, after one quarter, one game, Anthony got the job. I don't know if it'll be that soon this time around. And so we'll see how it goes. And also, injuries are a factor. Obviously you hope everyone stays healthy throughout, the offseason. But going into the season, this thing, to me, remains fluid because we haven't seen Anthony stay healthy, even if he does win the job.
I don't think, by the way, James Boyd with us here live at the owners' meetings down in Florida. Have there been any talk of joint practices yet? I'm trying to think. I guess preseason schedule probably doesn't get announced until the regular season gets announced here coming up in May. But has there been any mention about joint practices? I assume those would be important evaluation points for Jones and Richardson as well.
This is why you should have been here, KB, because I forgot to ask that. But we'll follow up with Chris Ballard here in, I believe, about an hour or so, give or take. And so I'll be able to ask him that then, because that is a big talk. But I would imagine they do it. I can't remember the last time I was on the beat when they haven't had that joint practice. And, again, when you're in a QB competition, you want as many, reps as you can get and close to live reps as you can get. And it'll be vital for both of them because, it's not like Daniel Jones is someone who you can just throw in there and hope that he's going to play well. He probably needs those reps as well.
James Boyd on location this morning from the owners' meetings, the NFL owners' meetings in Florida on the Payless Liquors hotline. Any thoughts from anybody on E.J. Speed moving over to the Houston Texans?
No, I didn't get a chance to catch up with any of the other AFC coaches. When we were in there, I kind of just want to stay with Shane. But obviously it is a significant development for this team. Not one that's not surprising to me. I expected them to move on from E.J. Speed, but obviously that position, right guard, tight end, which, Shane wouldn't go near with the 10-foot pole. Those are positions to keep an eye on going forward.
Sounds like a horse in the background. One of the owners leaving the owners' meetings on a horse?
In a carriage?
No, was one of the people bringing out some coffee on like a little trolley or a cart.
Oh,
and
wow.
so skipping over the sidewalk here.
You don't get that at the Hampton Inn Continental. Let me tell you that, folks.
I've
Okay,
never
Chris.
broken my life, KB. Like this is rich. This is a different world. I'm not used to this. I'm an outsider for sure.
Yeah, I think you and I can both raise our hands. The tax returns for you in a couple weeks will look different than some of the tax returns inside of the old breakers here coming up in a few weeks. Okay, Chris Ballard, you said later today, and anything else to keep an eye on?
No, that's about it. I will say that one of the things to keep an eye on, just general NFL news, is what's going to happen with the NFL and the push.
Mm-hmm.
Will it be banned? Will it be, stay legal? I know that there has been a lot of push from opposing coaches outside of Philadelphia for this play to be banned. And obviously Shane, being a Nick Sirianni guy, was like, no, I'm all for it. It's a legal play. Obviously he had success with it when he was the offensive coordinator in Philly. And so that's like the big news just as far as the overall league, because throughout Shane Steichen's interview that we had, there were many people stopping by to get his thoughts on the tush push and whether it should be, legal or not. And so, he said Nick gave him a spirited call about it. I knew that he would have his support now. He backed him publicly, and it kind of makes sense considering the success they had.
JB, thanks for stopping by. We will talk to you again soon. Have fun down there and take advantage of those buffets when you can, okay?
Absolutely, man. I would say I miss you guys, but, I miss my cluster truck on Tuesdays, but I'll make up for it here,
Appreciate it. That's our own James Boyd down from the owners' meetings here on the Payless Liquors hotline. Look, it's radio. One of the perks of radio, they don't pay you a ton of money in radio. One of the perks is we get a lot of free food, so that's very important stuff.
Well, I'd say great food as well from Cluster Truck, so looking forward to that tomorrow. And we did the Dunk Fest deal over the weekend, outstanding deal that they have during March Madness. I'm good with the Braden Smith staying at right tackle, by the way. I know some people have had questions about that. I worry about, do you take a position that is a strength right now, and do you lessen that by moving him inside? He hasn't played guard since 2017 at Auburn. It's 2025, so I'm good on that, but I do think what happens at right guard remains to be seen here this offseason.
It's Fan Morning Show with KB, JB, and Jeff. Mark Dykton on the ones and twos. Coming up in a moment, we turn our attention to the Indiana Pacers heading down the stretch and potentially in a really good spot to lock up the 4th seed in the Eastern Conference over the next 7 to 10 days. We'll talk to Tony East about that next here at 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
You're listening to the Fan Morning Show on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Thanks for starting the week with us. Reminder, Rick Carlisle tomorrow, 8 o'clock. This time tomorrow, Fran Fraschilla. He's in town on the call of the NIT up at Hinkle. He also calls a whole lot of Big 12 games, so definitely want to throw a Darren DeVries question or two Fran's way. Coming up tomorrow, considering he did call his games at West Virginia, and always enjoy the conversations with Fran. Let's head to the Payless Liquors hotline right now, a man that I enjoy talking to. Haven't had him on in a while, but he's been very, very busy on the Pacers front. 2 weeks to go in the regular season. He is Tony East. Tony, good morning to you. How are you?
I'm excellent. It has been a while, Kevin. I've missed hearing your voice in the morning.
Well, we try to be respectful of your late nights.
I don't need you to do that.
Well, you deserve it, the very least. You've got a lot of work to get done. It'll be a late one for you tonight. Pacers and Kings on paper. It's a pretty manageable week for the Pacers at home. Outside of getting home court, Tony, what do you want to see from the Pacers in these final 7 or 8 games?
Some bench consistency, I think, would be the thing that they would hope to see the most. I mean, last year at this time was their bench stretch of this era, really. I mean, T.J. McConnell was having his, absurd stretch where he was a legitimately terrific isolation scorer for, a couple months, and they were getting good center minutes from Jalen Smith and Isaiah Jackson, and Ben Shepherd was making shots, and that group was good in the regular season and then also in the postseason, right? And for a team that wants to play fast, being able to do that for 48 minutes and have the reserve depth to keep everybody fresh was really important. And this year they haven't had that at all for, much of the year. It's been up and down largely, and lately it's been more down than up. They're changing things up recently. Ben Shepherd removed for Jarris Walker the last couple of games for rotation minutes, and the way they're using Thomas Bryant's different, and everybody's minutes are coming at different times. Ben Mathurin has a calf injury right now, right? Altogether, this leads to just a ton of questions about how effective that group can be. And, in the playoffs, you play fewer bench guys, sure, but the way the Pacers want to play requires them to at least rely on that group somewhat. And I don't know how much they feel like they can trust them right now, right? Maybe that's why they're tinkering. And, Obi Toppin's minutes distribution is different now, and that's helped him, but they've got to figure it out for everybody, and I think that they're trying to, because last year it was a weapon, and this year it's been a weakness in a way that I think they'll need to try to figure out in these last 8.
Tony East joining us to talk Pacers here from Locked On Pacers. They play the Sacramento Kings later on tonight over at the Fieldhouse. Kings have lost 5 of their last 6. They are in 10th spot in the West right now, just a game ahead of the Phoenix Suns. Are the Pacers worried about playing a desperate team tonight, or is this team just – they don't have it this year? What do you think is going to happen?
Yeah, some teams just hit that point where the life just gets sucked out of them. I wonder if that just happened to the Kings in their last game. They lost in Orlando by 30, and it's just like, you trade away De'Aaron Fox, you fire your coach, and your interim coach maybe isn't going to be the guy after looking like he was for a second, and all of a sudden you might not make the play-in. The Suns are 1 game behind you, although Kevin Durant just got hurt. Like, at some point it just hits everybody on the team that this year might not be your year, and it becomes so hard to be focused or put your best foot forward every night. Maybe they have one more punch just because they're still in that play-in race. So I would lean that they're more not a desperate team, but you just never know with these March or April NBA games, right? Like, they're just so weird at this stage of the season with where everyone's head's at and where all these teams' goals are. Like, if I'm the Kings, I want to lose. My top 12 protected pick, I can keep that. Heck yeah. But they probably aren't thinking that way. So it's really hard to just know how this will all shake out. That said, I find it hard to see it. I find it hard to believe Domantas Sabonis would ever fold or pack it up at an NBA setting. And so I don't think they'll be, an easy out by any means. It's probably their second hardest game of the week, which says more about their schedule than the Kings necessarily. But they're not looking good of late, and it's certainly a game the Pacers should be expected to win, I would say.
Tony R. East, that's where you follow him on Twitter. He is with us on the Payless Liquors hotline. Tony, the easiest opponent to winning a first-round series is who? The easiest path to getting back to the Eastern Conference Finals is what?
Yeah, I think in the first round now you got to say it's the Bucks. I mean, I wouldn't have said that as recently as 10 days ago, but they have lost.
And that's assuming Lillard is obviously out.
Yeah, that's a big part of it. I don't know what the deal is. I think Sam Amick reported in The Athletic that he could return, but I don't remember a guy coming back from blood clotting that fast. both because of how long it takes things like blood thinners to actually, impact you and the risks that come with that. And, I guess it's different in the leg, so I don't know what I'm talking about, but just I don't recall anyone returning quickly from that. And, yeah, not only that, like they were playing not great with him, right? They were out west and they were playing all these teams that were missing stars on back-to-backs, and they were losing to your Suns, your Warriors, I forget who the third one was. And so they weren't playing that well anyway. They traded away Chris Middleton and all this stuff. And then, yes, now you add in this Dame factor. It's like, man, these guys are looking flimsy in a way that was unexpected. The problem is, I would imagine, I don't know how you feel about this, Kevin, but I would imagine the best seed for the Pacers is probably 4 for the conference finals path. Not because it's so much easier to beat the Cavs and the Celtics, but I would say it's a little bit easier. And I think that's pretty important, especially because home court for the Pacers in the first round could end up being a big deal. Last year, they didn't lose a home playoff game till the conference finals, right? They won every home game they played in the first 2 rounds. So I would imagine that, maybe they could push for 3, I suppose, but it's going to be hard to game it in a way that gets you the Bucks and gets you the 4. And I think that their chance of making the conference finals is probably more important than the first round opponent. They'd be favorites against Detroit anyway. So unfortunately for them, kind of conflicting goals of who their easiest first round opponent could be and what their easiest path to the conference finals might be, at least in my opinion. Obviously, some could say, hey, dummy, the Cavs have won 60 games. That's not an easy series, and they're probably right. But the Bucks, with the way they're trending and the way that Lillard's hurt, I think would be the easiest first-round opponent. But they just keep losing and losing. Their schedule's pretty easy the rest of the way, but they play Detroit 2 more times. These seeding scenarios are going to be really hard to figure out just because of those 2 games.
It might have been a weird dream I was having, so I apologize to ask the question. Were you once a world-class Guitar Hero player?
How do you know that? That is true.
Boy, that is
Kevin
wild.
knows everything. Have you not been paying attention?
Can you tell us more? And how? Like, what particularly was your skill set you feel like that made you so elite?
There's no way to get into this without spending way too much time explaining things.
No. We need it. We need
a good 30-second answer here.
Oh, we need a good 60 seconds on your elite.
30 to 60. Yeah, it was fun to play when I was 14.
Oh, stop being humble. Come on, brag a little bit.
And so actually the first way I ever made money was uploading Guitar Hero videos onto YouTube. But back then, I have since deleted all of them. So good luck finding them. But some of them are on my phone.
That's how you found your wife. Is what
I think you should post one.
I don't know how to describe it. I guess hand dexterity, because at the level it takes to be like really good, you have to use both hands to press buttons. It's just a very confusing thing to explain without showing you. But yeah, it's good times, I guess. I'm glad I did it, but I don't ever want to play the game again.
Were you like 100% on the Dragon Force song? Remember that song was like everyone was trying to do it blindfolded?
Yeah, not quite there, but now that's like not even a challenge for the best players, but I was close-ish, yes.
So why do you have no interest at all in continuing this?
He's like Andrew Luck with football. He just wants to move on.
He's got other things.
You know?
Personal pride, partially. I don't know. It's just not a good use of my time, and it's an expensive hobby. They don't make the guitars anymore, so they're hard to get a hands on a good one.
Who would be your NBA comp?
I have two, but they're both broken. Right, I can't even use them.
So as Tyrese Halliburton is to facilitating you are to Guitar Hero, is that a fair comp?
Not anymore. Like the top players now are like crazy to me in a way that freaks me out. But whatever, maybe someday.
Last one for me, the great Tony East, the elite Guitar Hero.
Oh. This was the toughest song. This song right here.
Now you're going to give him PT. You've maybe ruined the start of his week here in the
production work right there.
He's not coming back now, Mark.
Listen to this. Hold on. Like, imagine doing that with your fingers.
He shows up to the Pacer game at like 8:30 tonight, just disheveled and just doesn't look like he's showered.
Starting to drink again.
3 days.
Bunch of Code Red bottles laying down in Dorito bags.
Tony East, consistent run for Jarris Walker, just simply Benedict Mather out of the lineup, or something you also want to watch down the stretch?
Yeah, Mathurin playing again would be a big deal. You know, he is another like part of that bench thing I was saying earlier. Just like seeing him in the playoffs, I think is a really important secondary goal for the Pacers this year. What is he? How does he fit in that setting? How does that look? Because like the theory of what Ben Matherin's good at in the playoffs makes a lot of sense, right? The game slows down slightly, even if the Pacers don't want to slow down, and he seems like he'd be better in that setting. So he's someone that I think they and fans should want to have an eye on the rest of the way to see how that clicks because, you know, as much as his role has really changed, like he won them several games last week because that kind of game is where he can thrive, right? And so I don't know that it's going to ever be the perfect blend of what he can do and what the Pacers want to do. But in the playoffs, it seems like that merging should look better, right? Or the melding, as Rick Carlisle said recently, should look a little better in theory. But, you know, last year they took pride in not slowing down. So I don't know what his current status is. I haven't looked at the injury report. I'm apparently not doing my job very well.
Matherin is out for tonight.
Okay. Yeah, I think Carlisle said in OKC that he'd be day-to-day probably. But, you know, with muscle things, it's never like snap your fingers and it's over. And you have to be careful with calves. Last year was like the year of the calf in the NBA. It helped the Pacers a lot in the playoffs that Giannis had a calf injury. So they got to manage that cautiously if they want to have him back because that's a big thing for them to find out this year.
Hendricks, Van Halen, East.
Don't be throwing shade at Eric Clapton.
Clapton.
When did I say that? There had to be a time I said that out loud.
No, I just feel like I just know these things, Tony. You know,
he's stalking you, Tony.
You know, I'm a huge fan of Tony East. Tony R. East. That's where you can find his work on Twitter. The Pacers at home Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Off to Denver on Sunday. Tony, we do need to have you on right around the playoff times if you don't mind. But thank you as always.
You got it. Happy to do it.
That's a great Tony East right there. Payless.
I kind of feel like you did like a deep Google dive on Tony over the weekend and just kind of went down one of those rabbit holes.
I could have sworn it might have been a bad dream. But
you dreamt of him playing Guitar Hero?
I know. I don't know.
But how would you know that then?
That sounds so creepy.
And then he is? So are you clairvoyant now?
Doesn't he strike you, though, as that?
Were you an early subscriber to Guitar? Maybe that's how you knew Tony East to begin with.
I was never a huge Guitar Hero. The whole playing with both hands, boy, that's a step above.
We had the Rock Band game, the one where it's like the
Sure,
drums,
sure.
the guitar,
Yeah,
the bass, and the microphone, because I had two brothers. So we would have like a Blink-182 thing going on where there's all three of us doing stuff.
I can hear all the small things blaring right now.
I was bass and lead vocals, and then my other brother who played drums was drummer, and my other brother who played guitar was guitar.
You left
me. Bass and lead vocals. You're the one.
I was doing work, man.
Give me a little. You left me roses by the stairs. Surprises. Let me know you care.
Maybe I'll bring that back with a rejoinder or something, but I have to get in my Tom DeLonge voice then. By the stairs.
5.5 point favorite tonight. The Pacers.
Tony East.
Over the Kings.
How are you managing this roster and making sure everybody stays healthy over the next 10 games, KB?
I don't know. A question maybe I could have thrown to Tony, but I feel like Siakam looks like he's hit a bit of a wall. And there is part of me that probably holds him to a higher standard because he's just so darn consistent. But if you look at like the last couple of games, that's probably too small of a sample size. I'd argue the last couple of weeks, I feel like we have not gotten the same Siakam that we're used to. I mean, I feel like he is like a walking 20 points on 60% of shooting.
Yeah, 11 points, 9 rebounds against the Thunder the other night.
Do you have his stats up?
Yeah, let me look it up.
Go back past that. I mean, aren't there other games kind of around that ballpark? If you look at like the past 5 to 7 games for him,
I'm going to look it up.
You know, he missed the one game due to the personal issue, and I feel like right around then he's just kind of had some quieter games. So I don't know. Does he need an off night? Do you manage minutes down the stretch with them? Is it just one thing? Hey, just wait till the playoffs when you're playing, every 2 and 3 nights. You don't run into that big of an issue. It just seems like he's been a little quieter than what we're used to.
He has, and I've got an internet issue right here. I know it's right there. What'd you do to the phones and the internet, Mark, while you were gone?
Well, I need to have job security, so my job is to keep employment. So
Mark pulls 3 plugs before he leaves, and then make sure when he comes back.
All the red wires are now green, so you don't know what to cut. Yeah,
that would be really smart.
I will tell you this:
that'd be as smart as going in the continental breakfast when you aren't even staying.
I'm telling you, man, those hotels don't keep watch
at that hotel.
So you talked about consistency. He in January he was averaging. A little over 22 points per game. In February, it was 20.9. In March so far, 20.1. He's been really consistent, 18.3 for the entire season.
Yeah, but just lately. Am I wrong? I don't know. I should probably look this up. Like the last 2 weeks. I feel like he's been more of like a 12-point guy, 14-point guy.
Here's what we've got lately. All right, so don't like the way they set this one up. Yeah, 11 points, 9 rebounds the other night.
11-9, 13-5, 15-2, 15-6.
Yours is working. There we go.
13-2, 6-6. Like, I mean, we're just not used to those nights from him. And again, he is held to an incredibly high standard, and that's kudos to him. He earned the All-Star nod, but I'd like to see him get back to that. So
yeah, last time he had 26 was March 22nd against Brooklyn.
So minutes-wise, do you play around with any of that here down the stretch? But, on paper, you've got a very manageable week. Kings and, really, what you got? Jazz, I think it is, on Friday. Hornets. So, a lot of teams that are going to be off to the lottery.
Just take care of business and hope that Detroit and Milwaukee continue to lose, and you'll be in a really good spot at the end of the year.
I mean, honestly, if you just take care of business yourself, you don't even need the help.
It never hurts. Teams. I like those cushions. I always like those cushions. All right, let's check out what's happening in the entire world of sports based in Indianapolis right now.
The Morning Checkdown, brought to you by the Women's Basketball Invitation Tournament. Elevate the game at the WBIT, coming to Hinkle Fieldhouse March 31st and April 2nd.
Now it's working, KB. Now that I don't need it anymore, it's popped right up. Gotta love that stuff, right? Wow. Fresh off vacation, going back on vacation. That's how we have to set it up.
Yeah.
Mark goes on vacation for a week, comes back for a day, he's leaving again tomorrow.
Yeah. It's like the George Costanza. You got to leave on a high note. So, I just come in, I say some one-liners, and I'm like, bye, I'm out. I'll see you in a couple days.
All I'm saying is Kylan did a really nice job.
Hey.
Corbin Lingenfelter the next 2 days. Is that right, Mark?
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Purdue, of course, losing to Houston in the Sweet 16 this past weekend, 62-60 on Friday night over at Lucas Oil Stadium. Last inbounds play in the final 2 seconds sinks the Boilers. It was a tough one. That hurt.
Yeah, that was a kick in the you-know-what. Mark, you got that Braden Smith audio from that last play. I know we played Matt Painter a little bit earlier. Braden, the man that left the inbounder. If you watched it earlier in the game, Purdue ran very similar coverage. They got a Miles Colvin steal off of it. Braden Smith recaps what happened there at the end.
We knew that they were going to come off a back screen and Cryer was going to get that shot in the corner. We've seen it in film and stuff. So I was just trying to take that away. And as we did that, CJ or whoever it was, we switch it and kind of he takes it and goes back to the ball, kind of like what Coach just explained with Miles where he got the steal. And I don't know, I mean, I could have stayed. I mean, there's a lot of different things that could have went into it. I just didn't want Cryer coming off and hitting that shot.
Honestly, you go back and watch it, I don't even know if CJ Cox would have recognized it right away. I don't know if he gets back to the inbounder quick enough. That was just instinctually. Shout out to JT Tugler. I mean, that was an unbelievable read that he made.
Yeah, they talked about him being the third option,
right?
Too.
And the inbounder to get that layup. But I do think a major hat tip to Braden Smith. 15 assists and 3 turnovers in that game. Look at Ziegler yesterday for Tennessee. Look at Ryan Nembhard in the game before. These are great point guards that just wilt against Houston. While Braden Smith's point total maybe wasn't at the level, he assisted on every single Purdue field goal in the second half. It was a remarkable game against the number 1 defense in college basketball for Braden Smith. So I know a lot of people obviously remember the end of that game, but 15 assists and 3 turnovers against Houston, nobody does that.
NBA, we talked about the Pacers just a moment ago. On Saturday, they lost in Oklahoma City 132-111. They still lead the Pistons by 2 games in the East, Milwaukee by 3 games. They have 10 games remaining currently, 12 games over 500. They're in a pretty good spot right now. They just got to keep it rolling, KB.
Yeah, I mean, falling on their face. I mean, what, 8 to go? I mean, it'd be a shock if they didn't get, home court at this point here with where they're at. From a seeding standpoint and given their schedule here down the stretch. I would expect Cleveland to be resting, some as well here coming up next week. So tonight they have got the Kings inside of Gainbridge Fieldhouse.
You can hear that one here on 93.5, 107.5 The Fan beginning at 6:30. High school basketball, your state champions. In 1A, it's Orleans with a win over Clinton Prairie. Manchester gets 2A with a win over University, who had a great year. South Bend St. Joseph's came through in the clutch. They beat Crispus Attucks 56-52. And in overtime, Jeffersonville, a 1-point winner over Fishers, ending the Tigers' 43-game winning streak. That was tough.
You were on the call. How was the atmosphere? It looked great on TV.
Unbelievable. Electric. It was a full arena. Trey Singleton brought it, 26 points for Jeffersonville. Jason Gardner Jr., Justin Kirby, John Anthony Hall all played well for Fishers. Fishers didn't play poorly. Jeffersonville played really, really well. That's what happened.
Yeah, Singleton obviously huge point-wise, but had the big assist in overtime there to retake the lead for Jeffersonville. 4 great games. When you look at the point totals, 19 points. We mentioned it earlier in the show, the smallest ever if you combine the 4 games in the class era. South Bend St. Joe's, Chase Kineski having that tip-in dunk there with about a minute to go that pushed them over the edge against Crispus Attucks. And I was talking with Greg Rakestraw yesterday. Since 2008 is what we came up with. The first time that we have seen all 4 champions, I'd say significantly outside of the Indy area when you look at the 4 schools, everybody at least an hour or hour and a half plus outside of the Indy area. So oftentimes we get used to just wait till they play the Indy schools. Well, not this year.
58% shooting from the field for Jeffersonville in this game, KB.
Boy, that's a great number. That's a big number.
58%.
Shocked they almost didn't score more points than that. Portal Nudes, Will Berg and Brian Waddell for Purdue, both in the transfer portal, so a couple scholarships open. Matt Painter has mentioned they will at least get a big man, and we'll see what else from a portal standpoint. Indiana, they have obviously tons of additions they need. Sounds like a busy day on campus. Ryan Conwell, the Xavier Pike product, is visiting. So is Josh Dix, the former Iowa guard. Some other Indiana news this morning, reports of Yarden Garcon, their leading scorer on the women's side, is entering the transfer portal there. And Zach Osterman had this. Certainly Indiana fans will know this name. Tim Garl, the longtime athletic trainer here. Zach tweeted this out this morning. Announced this morning that Garl will not be renewed for next season. Garl's last day is Monday. The statement said Scott Dolson informed Garl he wanted a fresh start for IU's sports medicine setup inside of the program.
New coach, only second year now coming for Signetti too, so they're going to change things up there. Also, Colts news, EJ Speed signs as a free agent with the Houston Texans for about $5 million a year. And earlier today, Shane Steichen doubling down on full competition between Daniel Jones and Anthony Richardson at the NFL owners meeting.
Get your popcorn now, Colts fans.
Yeah, we'll hit more on that on the other side. A little bit more from James Boyd down there as well. Thanks for tuning in with us to start your week. It is the Fan Morning Show here on a Monday.
You're listening to the Fan Morning Show on Sports Radio 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Getting ourselves set up for transfer portal talk and also NFL offseason stuff with the NFL owners' meetings taking place earlier today. Real quickly before we talk about the Colts too, and James brought it up when we spoke to him a few minutes ago, KB. To me, it's ridiculous that they want to ban the tush push. You can like that play, not like that play. To me, it's akin to when the NBA just decided to ban the dunk. You can either do it. Some people can do it. Some people can't. You're just penalizing people that can't seem to stop a play. I don't have a problem with it. I don't know why other people have such a problem with it, other than the fact that it's just you can just count on it.
Yeah, if you don't like it, get better at it.
Yeah, I don't have any problem with it whatsoever.
Or put in the rule again where you can't push a player. Like, that used to be a rule in the NFL.
Well,
then they went back on it. So, okay.
Tell it to Notre Dame fans, the old tush push back in the day.
Are you still bitter over the Reggie Bush play?
I am. I'm still bitter over it. Just like I'm sure Purdue fans will be bitter over that push-off that happened late in the game on Saturday, or on, I should say, Friday night, Saturday morning is probably more like it. Yeah, I sided Nick Sirianni on this. I think Shane Steichen, given his Eagles roots, not a surprise there. I'm always curious. I think I've asked Shane once about this. Shane, again, sides of the tush push, still being in the game. The Colts have had such an inability to, like, execute that play.
Right. And what's interesting about the Eagles,
is Jalen Hurts really this, like, unbelievable, he squats all this weight, and then their offensive line's able to, like, rugby it up?
What's interesting, though, is we all thought for a while that maybe Jason Kelce was the key to that, right? Then he retires. They picked up right where they left off.
Right.
They just know how to execute. You would think that a team like the Colts with Anthony Richardson, as big and strong and as athletic as he is, you would think that would be an easy play for the Colts to run.
The interior of your O-line with Quentin Nelson, Ryan Kelly, Will Fries.
Just go behind Quentin Nelson, right?
In past years.
And people and other teams try to duplicate it, and they just can't do it the way that the Eagles do. They got it down to a science where it's just like, you cannot stop that play when they do it. It's
like
ridiculous.
Other teams doing it looks like the Little Giants trying to run it, and the Eagles doing it looks like,
Some of our Chiefs fans are like, that's the least of our problems.
Dallas Carter, I should say.
Tush push the least of the problems for the Chiefs at this point in time.
James Boyd joined us earlier, mentioned that Shane Steichen down there at the owners' meetings. It will be split reps for Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones this offseason. When would you want to have a starter named?
I think I think you come into the OTAs, and that's where you really go split reps. You see, A, how quickly is Daniel Jones even picking up the new offense? And B, unless he is just miles ahead of Anthony Richardson, I don't see how you can make him your starter. Do you see there being some huge gulf between the two when they have these split reps?
I think what's tough, too, about having a starting competition in the offseason is this right now is when Richardson, you don't have his strength at all. What is his strength?
Is it improvise, run with the football.
As a runner. Yeah. Well, it's a red jersey the whole offseason. So,
but you want to see a quarterback that can execute your offense as it's designed, right?
Well, yeah, but I mean, part of the Richardson appeal is you have a designed offense that includes all the multiplicity from it.
But I think ideally you want a quarterback that can run your offense as it's purely designed, that then also adds the wrinkle of, well, if it's not there, then I'm just going to make something happen.
Well, I mean, I hear you out a little bit, but you don't draft Richardson 4th overall if you think he's just going to walk into a pocket passing offense.
Right, but that was 2 years ago, and between his injury history and some of the games that he has played, you got to wonder whether he really is your guy.
I'll be interested to see just, again, when do they want to commit to one? Like, are they really going to play out all through training camp?
You think they get alternating starts in those preseason games?
All through the preseason games?
Yeah.
Do you seemingly let this ride until the end of August? And then all of a sudden you commit to one? Because, again, you are hamstringing, both of them by not committing to one from the rep standpoint. I understand why you're doing it. If you're going to preach competition, then, how do you go about it? But when is that period where you look at it and say, all right, enough is enough. Let's string together 2, 3, 4 straight weeks of this guy running with our first team offense. If you have, this past year's schedule out of the gate, Houston, week 1 was the biggest game of the season. If you're going to have a growing period early in the season of like, the guy's still a little rusty working with the starting offense, he didn't get exclusively all the first team reps in the offseason. Well, boom, last year, you started 0-2, and that proved to be a hole that was too big to dig out of. That, I think, will be something to watch when the schedule gets released here in a little over a month.
Where do you factor in the leadership ability of Anthony Richardson and his grasp on that, especially coming out the way things went down last year? How much of that is a big part of who ends up being the starting quarterback?
Yeah, I mean, if you know, how much of that was more of a regular season thing for the Colts? They really didn't seem to have an issue with it in the offseason. Was that more of a, hey, you get in the grind of the regular season and, you know, it goes to another level? Where you're at from a standard standpoint, you know, that has so much gray area. I think it's just kind of difficult to truly gauge exactly how they view it, where he's at, et cetera, et cetera. We probably should mention as well, it's a new center, you know, working with these quarterbacks. So that'll be something also to keep an eye on. You know, Ryan Kelly has been the guy, of course, for the last 9 years. But, yeah, that was a big news item from James Boyd earlier today. Again, that quarterback reps being split between those two. He did add that right guard is up in the air, but Braden Smith will stay at right tackle. You know, I shared earlier, I'm totally good with that. I think Braden Smith has proven to be a very quality right tackle. You know, health has been a little bit of a concern, so you don't ignore that. But at the same time, he hasn't played guard in 8 years. You know, all of a sudden move him over to right guard, and it's not like you have this like ready-made right tackle sitting there in the wings. Matt Gonzalez, sure, you would hope at some point he could be that, but that position I think means a whole lot. I'd rather go with the sure thing than risk it a little bit.
We love what they did defensively in free agency. There's no question they've solidified their secondary. We still wonder what they're going to do at edge and linebacker. But also, while we're talking about the offense, you got Jonathan Taylor at running back right now, and it feels like maybe they're just going to go look for somebody in the middle to late rounds to add one more piece to the puzzle over there. Where are you at on running backs right now?
Yeah, I'm good with a mid-round running back.
It seems to be the direction that they're headed at this point
probably
in time.
more of a receiver threat. Yeah, I know Khalil Herbert, they signed in the offseason, so that's a little bit on the depth front, but I would go there as well. Final four team you've been most impressed with so far?
Duke. The fact, to me, the question for Duke coming into this tournament, KB, was their youth, right? And we know they've got talented guys all over the place, but they're all young guys, and a lot of them hadn't had postseason experience before. And you look at the game that they had in the Elite Eight, where they had a relatively easy win. Cooper Flagg didn't even play as near anywhere his best game. Gon Knupp came up using that. Malawach continues to be a force inside offensively and defensively. And you start to look at this team, and now that they have 30 games under their belt as mostly first and second year guys, they're playing really well together, both ends of the floor now.
I'm just waiting for Coach K to just get on the sideline, step aside, Shire. I'm taking over one last time.
Did we even get any crowd shots of Coach K this weekend?
I don't remember seeing it.
But I think
he's Jim Nantz won in the Houston game with Jarris Walker.
But I think he's done a great job of letting this be John Shire's team, because it would be easy to say he's a Coach K disciple. It'd be easy to see him around the program all the time. I think he's done a really nice job of letting John Shire take this over and be the guy.
Wait until they make the national championship. He's going to step him aside.
Cue up a
Let me
little
show you, old man.
Jiffy Lube sounder right here. Our Jiffy Lube stat of the day, courtesy of Scotty. As we said all morning long, we've got 4 number 1 seeds in the Final Four. First time since 2008, also in San Antonio. Entering this season, we had only had 2 players in the history of the Final Four to make it with 2 different teams, including Bob Bender with Indiana and Duke back in the 70s. This year, thanks to the transfer portal, you've got 3 of them. Houston's L.J. Cryer, probably the most decorated. He was with Baylor back a couple of Final Fours ago, now almost 4 Final Fours ago. Florida's Elijah Martin was with Florida Atlantic and Dusty May back in 2023. And, of course, right here in our own backyard, Mason Gillis transferring from Purdue to Duke. A little bit of clock here from Mason Gillis throughout the tournament. Not a lot, but he is getting a little bit of clock for the Blue Devils. Hit a few threes in one of their games. I forget who. Maybe Mississippi State, or maybe it was Baylor in round 2.
Yeah. They're deeper than you think. They play better defense than you think, and they're one of the top offenses in the country. This Houston-Duke game is going to be amazing. And I don't like it's the de facto championship game because the other 2 teams are pretty good too. That's the reason they're all number 1 seeds. But I've been impressed by how well the young guys have stepped up already.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, obviously Proctor had the big game early in the tournament. But, yeah, it hasn't just been Cooper Flagg. And, really, when you look at Cooper Flagg, you look at Janai Broome. I mean, yeah, had a little bit of a Willis Reed type moment there for Broome And then Walter Clayton Jr., I mean, those three guys, you see why they're first-team All-Americans. I mean, Clayton Jr., I mean, for those that haven't watched Florida in this tournament, I mean, if you would have paused the second-round game with 3 minutes to go, if you would have paused the Elite Eight game with 3 minutes to go, you don't think they're surviving both. And I know Texas Tech missed the front ends of a couple one-on-ones.
Got to have help.
But Clayton Jr. coming down, hitting those threes, the big kid Houck as well. Boy, Florida's got some great depth to them. And again, they won at Auburn earlier this season, so this is a rematch. But they went into Auburn. That was that was before Auburn had kind of had that late skid to end the season. So 2.5-point favorite Florida in that one. 4.5 points Duke favorite over Houston. Duke Houston, the second game coming up on Saturday night.
Going to be a lot of fun to watch. Coming up in just a moment, we'll wrap up a big weekend of sports here in Indianapolis. Get you ready to go for the week ahead as we continue on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
You're listening to the Fan Morning Show on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Mark Dykton on the ones and twos. Great to see you coming off vacation. We'll see you again next week, right? Is that how that works?
Pretty much. Tip my cap. I step in, make sure that my key card still works. I'm like, okay.
Who approved this? That's what I want to know.
I'll see you later. Well, I was asked, like, why don't you just take Monday off? I'm like, well, I don't know. I don't really need it off. I'd like to save some PTO, so I'll use it. I won't lose it. But I don't need it today.
But then you got KB who takes his vacation and just goes to national championships, does his own thing, right?
He sneaks in.
I like that.
There's part of me that watched the end of that Purdue game and was like, is that a little bit how I kind of felt watching the national title? And, let's be honest, Purdue was a lot closer to Houston than Notre Dame was to Ohio State. But, the end of the game feel of, you kind of claw back. No one's really giving you a shot walking into the game. You keep it
close.
Yeah,
close-ish.
obviously Notre Dame was kind of the bigger comeback, and then all of a sudden 3rd and 11 hits you. Again, I don't want to act like it's apples to apples. I was talking to a Purdue buddy on Saturday morning.
Did you see his eyes? He's reliving the defeat all over again right now.
Actually, I was talking to my Purdue friend about this. I go back to when Notre Dame played in the Elite Eight against Kentucky. Kentucky was undefeated. That was the Karl Anthony Towns year. That's when Kentucky lost in the Final Four here to Wisconsin. That was, I think, kind of similar for me, but Yeah, Mark is off to Texas for the next couple of days here.
Yeah.
And nothing particularly on the docket, just off to Texas.
No, Ashley found cheap flights. She said, "You want to go?" I said, "Sure, why not? The kids are on spring break. What else are we doing?" So going to Waco and then Dallas, which we've been before, but going again. Like it. Going to Great
What's
Wolf.
the impetus of going there?
I don't know if you guys are familiar with the it used to be an HGTV show, Fixer Upper. My wife watches that with the
Chip
and Joanna Gaines. Yeah, they have a compound out in Waco and stuff. So there's literally right like Baylor's campus and football stadium is like right outside where it is. So gonna go there. Haven't gone there since our oldest was little, so we're gonna go out there again. Probably get some Whataburger, some In-N-Out burger, maybe test the two again against each other, and then we're also going to the Great Wolf Lodge. So water parks and burgers. Ooh, that's what we got on the docket.
Well, come back and be one of your kids one of these days, man.
Hey,
sounds like a
they
good
downed
life.
your koala march and everything, and the hot fries that James sent and everything like that. It all got taken down. So.
I actually still have a bag of hot fries for you.
Well, you got to the end of the day before I get out of here.
Well, you probably have to wait till you get back now.
I know that was
because at first I couldn't find the koala marches, so I thought backup, I'll get those. But I didn't want to do that because you'd already gotten a bag of those. I knew the kids really liked the koala marches, so I was really banking on that. Finally,
the 10-pack came out large. That was big. That was big by Jeff.
That's good, but it didn't even make it past the first day.
I don't even think we got out of the state of Indiana before they went down.
All right, let's check out the GOATs this week and see what happened here.
Who is the GOAT?
I told you all that I was the greatest of all time.
Jordan, here's Michael at the foul line. A shot on Elo. Good!
That's what I'm talking about! That's why he's MVP! That's why he's the GOAT! The GOAT!
Or GOAT?
This guy sucks.
Of the week.
I feel like GOAT takes on a whole new meaning after Severance has been on the last couple of years now, Mark.
See, I haven't watched Severance, so I don't get that reference.
This from Brian. Compounds in Waco doesn't sound like a good combination.
I thought the same thing.
I would probably agree with that.
I passed on that line. I was thinking about it when you said that, Mark.
Scott Drew, Chip, Joanna, and Mark Dighton.
Hey, their compound is probably a lot nicer, probably more expensive than the one that was back in the 90s.
It's crazy stuff. KB, what do you have?
My great go to the weekend. Shout out to our great Indianapolis Zoo. I just love the zoo. We stopped there on Saturday. I saw a whole lot of Kentucky faithful, a whole lot of Houston faithful at the zoo. It was a great, temperature day. It did sprinkle a hair or two, but that was perfect. You just go in there and see some penguins, pet some stingrays. I just love our zoo. And I feel like I'm reminded of it, just on an annual basis of how great our downtown establishments are, especially kid-friendly wise. Certainly the Children's Museum speaks for itself, but my wife, one of her best friends from college, was in town with her family. They got 3 young kids. They used to live here briefly. They hadn't been to the zoo, hadn't been to the Children's Museum in a few years, and just to kind of watch it through their eyes of gosh, reminded how much Indy's got great spots for this. So selfishly, as a young parent, I love that, and seeing some of those Kentucky faces sad as they try to walk around and pet some kangaroos did make me smile a little bit.
Mark, how about you?
Just vacation in general. Just the drive back from Florida was not fun, but the actual trip down to Florida was fun. Did the Mouse House, did all that stuff down at Disney, so the kids had a good time there. Oh, they've got delicious food and drinks at the Epcot. I used to shun Epcot back in the day when I was a kid. They've done it up, and their food and wine thing going on,
you should be
spectacular.
A Disney spokesperson.
Epcot as an adult is the place to go.
Oh, drinking around the world, getting on some roller coasters, everything like that. But yeah, we had some outstanding stuff out there and stuff. So very good times there, and then got to see the in-laws a little bit too, which is always a good time as well. So take your PTO, folks. Don't let vacations go to waste. That's my PSA for the day.
All right. Mine is going to be fairly obvious because I spent Saturday night at the Fieldhouse. Sharon Wilkerson, 1993 as a player, he leads Jeffersonville, one of the players that led them to a state championship when it was single class. And then he comes back as a head coach. And in just a couple of years now, he's built this program back up, and they win the 4A state championship in overtime. 32 years apart from being a player at the state championship and then coming back to coach your high school team to a state championship. It doesn't get much cooler than that, does it, guys?
Yeah. I wouldn't think so.
It's a hell of a story. He was on with Jake late last week. Enjoyed that combo. If you missed it, definitely check that out on the podcast. My lowercase goat of the weekend, my grass.
Oh, is it not faring so well?
It's just a reminder of oh man, this lawn. It kind of looks like my hair before we grow hair, Indy.
Well, that means there's hope.
I don't
There's
know.
hope.
There might need some assistance, maybe.
Well, and also, I don't know if you've dealt with this, but, we have a, nice, it was actually left by the previous owners. We got a nice, little mini swing set situation in the backyard. And, the kids love to go on it. Awesome. But, man, the amount of mud and just dead grass that is now
underneath
in that area. Like, should I mulch that area?
Does it lie low in the yard? Does it collect all the water every time it rains?
Not as bad as some other. I definitely have seen some other yards that are a little bit worse than that. I'm like, should I mulch it? Should I? I just got such a JV looking yard.
It'll come back. I promise.
You need Chris Denary to give you some advice. Chris Denary's backyard is immaculate.
Chris Denary would be disgusted with what it looks like. And we have made strong improvements from where it was. It used to be a freshman looking yard. It's probably now up to a JV looking yard. But I'm reminded the more time we spend outside how pathetic my lawn looks.
Well, hang in there. There's time. Mark, how about you?
So got back from vacation yesterday. I slept most of the day just to get my clock right, and I said clock. But I was just trying to get my mindset back, catch up on some sleep. So woke up, girls were out of the house, which was nice. Turned on the Cubs game. Oh, it was looking so good. Kyle Tucker looking like a superstar, belting a 3-run homer, 6-2 Cubs. Like, this is it. This is a wrap. Put a bow on this one. Well, then I was reminded of last year what pissed me off a lot with the Cubs, and it was the bullpen. So the bullpen comes in. Not only did you just get a 6-2 lead, you immediately blow it and give up 8 runs in the bottom of the 8th inning, and you lose 10-6. A game you should have won, got completely blown up by the Cubs bullpen, and I was ticked off. I was like, we're doing this again? I thought we just threw some money at the bullpen. We're doing this again? So it infuriated me, and we're 2-4 now. Should have had a series win instead you have a series split.
Mark,
it annoyed the hell out of me.
It's too early to be bitching about.
No.
If you would have
seen how that game ended,
every game they're either going to win the World Series or it's the worst team.
And Craig
ever.
Counsell's just mismanaging the bullpen. You got a guy, you're putting guys in dirty innings and everything
fire
like
him
that.
And hire David Bell.
I might ask Joel Erickson what it would take to give a return to sender on Craig Counsell. But yeah, just the bullpen being an issue. I had 6 games in, but I was already like, this cannot be happening already. There's too early in the season to be worrying about this, and I'm already annoyed.
Rubber mulch. That's what the listeners reached out and shared with me. Okay. All right.
I like that. It's consistent. You want to talk about consistency, KB? That would be the way to go. Mine is going to be a group effort. I'm going to have a whole herd of goats here. What is it about the Detroit Pistons? Did you see a near brawl again this past week? It ended up being mostly pushing and
DiVincenzo
shoving.
Quickly silenced it all.
Yeah, the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Detroit Pistons. 7 different guys, 5 players, 2 coaches get ejected. There's mostly pushing and shoving, but what is it about the Pistons that there just always seems to be a huge brawl waiting to happen at any moment in time? Doesn't matter whether it was 30 years ago, 20 years ago. Now, it's always the Pistons.
Beef stew. That could very well be a little 4-5 matchup here, Pacers-Pistons, if the playoffs started today.
It could be fun.
That's what we'd be looking at. I kind of forgot this. Do you guys know Butler's in the Crown today?
That's like that tournament they kind of made up, right?
Yep.
This is unbelievable to me.
It feels
so. Here we
how
are.
much stock do we put in this thing?
0.
Well, none.
I mean,
no
it's
stock
really,
whatsoever.
So it's an opportunity.
Team tournament. Butler is playing Utah. Utah doesn't have a coach, by the way. They have an interim coach here.
Do any of these teams still have enough players that are not going into the portal that they can field actual teams?
Yeah, that's where I'm a bit confused by it all. If Butler makes the semis, again, 16-team tournament, you get $50,000 for making the semis. You get $100,000. This is all towards your NIL. $100,000 for a runner-up and $300,000 for the winner. So Butler plays Utah today at 3:00 in Vegas.
Go Dogs!
Nothing like a noon Monday game in Vegas. Can you imagine the crowd in that one?
I mean, if you're getting out a trip to Vegas out of it, like, okay, but this whole thing seems a bit odd.
It's a great opportunity to get some more practice time with you guys in that are coming back.
The great Brendan
Whoever's
King
coming
says
back.
Butler has everybody but Telfort.
That's not bad.
So what is Telfort just training for the draft? It's just weird to me.
Well, and why are you so removed from the season at this point? I don't get why it's so late.
Because there's an opportunity to make some money and add to your NIL if you can come up in the top 3.
I think you want to make it interesting. The winner gets to go back into the Final 4. It's a Final 5 now. It's Final 4. It's a play-in.
That's the dumbest idea that you've ever had.
That's why I'm going on vacation tomorrow.
It's probably good that you.
Mark's already on vacation mode. He came back and he was already on vacation mode by 8:15.
Yeah, I've cashed this check already.
Yeah, it's just odd to me that this is how this tournament unfolds now. It's like if you're some of these underclassmen, I know Butler's not a team that necessarily falls into it, but if you're some of these underclassmen, you wanted to enter the portal. I mean, are these teams going to be able to field enough?
That's what I think the worry is going to be as we move forward. Not just this year, but moving forward even.
And it's a Fox-run event, right? They just want like the Fox teams in it?
I want to remind people that there are over 1,000 players in the portal since the end of the season, KB. 1,000 college basketball players have entered the portal. 1,000.
Sounds like a big day down in Bloomington. Ryan Conwell, the Pike product, visiting along with Josh Dix, a shooter from Iowa. And we saw Purdue subtraction activity yesterday. Nothing significant, really. Will Berg, Brian Waddell, and we'll see what the additions look like for Purdue here coming up later this week.
NFL owners meetings continue in Florida. KB, Chris Ballard going to speak with the media, I think, at some point today. What do you want to hear from him after we've seen what he did in free agency now and what's ahead?
Yeah, overall free agent thoughts and what's left. The kind of two big, ballpark sort of questions there, but a lot of avenues he can go down. So that's what I'll be curious. Doesn't sound like Jim Irsay, we'll be hearing from him at all. But yeah, that'll be an update that I'm curious about.
Mark, since you're going on vacation again, I'll give you the next 20 seconds unfettered. Anything up for you, or are you just putting gas in? You don't even have to do that because you're flying down there.
What's up with the gas prices, by the way? What's going on there? We came back, and it's like almost $3.50. What are we doing here? What happened?
They know the spring breakers are out and about.
Yeah, the airports.
Like I
last
thought
week.
the commute in this morning was quieter.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No, I got up early yesterday to take my family. They're doing some college visits on spring break, and I got a bunch of stuff I got to do here with my mom and everything. But going to the airport, just dropping them off at 5 o'clock in the morning.
Zoo.
It was a complete zoo.
Yeah.
Complete zoo.
By the way, Flory Badunga, Kanan Catchings, a couple others of note in the portal there.
All right. Jay comes your way at noon. JMV at 3. We'll see you tomorrow morning bright and early at 7.